this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 15, 2019, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Star-Ledger and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 15, 2019, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 15, 2019, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching their decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times.
Thank you, Eileen. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Just one second. Mr. Hughes?
Here.
Mr. Mertens?
Here.
Mr. Moretti?
Present.
Mr. O'Donnell has been excused. Mr. Orozco?
Here.
Mr. Saya?
Here.
Mr. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Laughlin? Chairman Nansen?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Tropoli, you mind swearing in the professionals, please?
I do.
Tonight we got Ms. Miro, Mr. Cunliffe, Ms. Bean, and Mr. Howard, all sworn in.
Thank you, sir. Approval of minutes.
There's no minutes this evening.
Vouchers?
We do have 2 vouchers for Mr. Tropoli. I will pass them around. Please
Okay.
make sure I get them back at the end of the night.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I was guilty of the last one.
So that's for you, huh?
Yep.
We'll take care of
You
them.
did get paid, right?
He did. I took
Oh,
care
okay.
of it.
I don't know how it wound up in my paperwork.
All comes out in the wash.
Okay.
We'll take care of them at the end.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Correspondence.
I do have correspondence. First of all, I don't have a letter, but on one of the applications this evening, Christian Eason, which is for certificate of nonconformity, they will not be heard this evening. Their notice was insufficient, so they have to renotice for another date.
Okay.
I also have a letter from...
We'll have to wait for a scheduled date, or we don't have one at this time?
No, they have to renotice anyway, so it
Okay.
doesn't matter. I also have a letter from Michael Vidiello. He is the attorney for Secudis Realty. He said, "Thank you for the telephone call regarding the above referenced matter. As we discussed, while the applicant has made significant progress, the applicant is still working with the NJDEP regarding the wetlands and wetland buffer area that will be required. This is also, of course, required before the applicant can revise the site plan for final presentation to the Howell Township Zoning Board. We would therefore typically request that the matter be rescheduled to a different hearing date before the zoning board. However, as you mentioned, since the zoning board has not finalized their meeting dates for 2020, the applicant hereby requests that this matter be withdrawn from the currently scheduled November 25th, 2019 agenda, subject to being rescheduled at a later date with a separate notice. He is going to contact me in January once we have our hearing dates to discuss a new date. He also granted the board an extension of time through June 30th, 2020. And during my conversation with him, I reminded him that it was a code case and that the board does not look favorably upon multiple carries for an application of this type because everything else is in limbo. So I told him this would be his last opportunity.
Mr. Tropoli. Okay, I'm pretty sure the board professionals will stay the same through 2020. However, if something changes with this application, we're stuck with, having new professionals coming in to be involved with this application. Our professionals now have a long track history of it, and how is that going to work?
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Chairman. However, first of all, they'll have to renotice, and we are not going to reinvent the wheel on this case,
Exactly.
period. And if it is the board's purview that this will be the last adjournment, the final adjournment, then what the board should do when you reorganize and the dates are officially done is assign it a date, and that is the proceed or die date. That would be my opinion, because, you cannot hold up forever the enforcement of the zoning laws.
Exactly.
Because it's been stayed in municipal court, and Matt, I venture to say, how long now?
The violation was written July 26, 2018, so well over a year.
And although the MLUL provides that matters are told until such time as they're handled before the board, you can only go so far as to say that we're being administratively held up by other areas. Let's get it started here. And that would be my opinion, but not from the beginning. In other words, this has been reviewed, probably re-reviewed, and triple-checked by the present board professionals. So,
They don't even have a site plan, though.
the only thing I could say, Mr. Chair, is that this would, in my opinion, should be the last time that it's carried. Meaning that when it gets a final date, you might consider a dismissal at that point in time if it comes to that. Because
But
you
shouldn't
have
they
to
be
be able
warned?
to enforce
Shouldn't they
your
be warned on that?
your laws. Pardon me?
Shouldn't they be warned? that
Should he be
this will
warned?
be the last carry date?
Well, I would certainly think that an appropriate letter, knowing the sense of the board, that I can work with Eileen to put something together that lets them know full well let's say, the disappointment and the concern that the board has with this application ever being moved.
Right.
Hey,
Because they-
Mr. Chair,
no,
I just want to state for the record,
Yes.
the violation was a year and a half ago.
I know.
It doesn't take a year and a half to mitigate the DEP issues, and these are not new issues. If you recall, this case was before us previously and then withdrawn.
I know,
So this
that's-
applicant is well aware of what is required, and I honestly feel at this point, it's just a stall tactic, because they're able to continue to operate the way they are, and Matt's violations are stayed while it's pending before us. So the longer they carry, the better it is for them. They can continue to operate as if there's no issue. So my recommendation would be you carry it, and the notice goes out to the applicant's attorney that this is the last time you're going to get carried. If you do not show up the next time, you're going to be dismissed. And that's the end of it. And then if they're going to then the municipal proceeding proceeds. If they want to resubmit, they're going to have to refile, repay, everything to say enough is enough. I mean, this is ridiculous at this point.
Matt, Mr. Howard, the summonses that were issued a year and a half ago, was that after or before they filed the application that was withdrawn?
We didn't issue summonses, we have a violation pending.
Well,
So-
was the violations issued prior to
So,
the
yes.
last application that was withdrawn?
No, not before the
That was from
application.
2014.
Right.
Okay.
So this is a new violation because they cleared a new area on their site. We gave them a certain amount of time. They showed that they were making progress on an application, and we extend that time out of good faith. Then they made the application, and we've since stalled. So we haven't ever been able to proceed because they met our first deadline and now are failing on their second, pretty much.
Okay.
Can you look in the archive and see if they have anything for wetlands in there? Because wouldn't that be a requirement that if they're working on their wetlands, they would have had to have an application to the DEP? We should have a copy of it. But do we know that they've made an application? Because if not, I mean, if they haven't even made their application, you're probably looking at another 6 months.
But
Right.
DEP issues are routinely a condition or a resolution compliance issue,
Right.
especially on a code case. I get that in this particular instance, it would be great to know what the situation is, but they're using this as an excuse to not come back before us. And if they haven't submitted, like, how long are we planning on waiting? It's been
No,
a year and a half.
No, that's why I'm having this discussion. I would say at the reorganization meeting, whenever we do a reorganization meeting, they should be notified of the date that they're going to be scheduled. If they don't make that date, sorry.
Okay.
And my recommendation is that that date be very close to reorg.
I know, that's what I'm
Like, it
saying.
not be, it's all
January,
well and good that
February.
they gave us an extension of time till June, but.
January or February,
Exactly.
period.
Okay.
Okay.
Priority.
Is anyone in the audience for, let me find it, case number BA 1831, Secuda Realty LLC? Seeing no one, this case will be rescheduled to reorg for a scheduled date.
Yeah, I don't think they've even noticed for this hearing date, so,
What do you mean?
like, I don't think they ever noticed for any of the hearing dates that we've provided them. They just keep
Well,
asking.
Well,
Then-
that's a problem too.
That's a problem.
An issue in and of itself. To me,
Then that's not a complete application.
right,
It's not deemed a complete application if they didn't follow through with their notices.
Well,
then
it's,
why carry them?
Yeah, exactly.
Can we just dismiss it?
Well, no, I understand that, but
'Cause
the
I don't
fact
ha-
that they're before us is staying the municipal proceedings. So if they haven't noticed for a hearing, then why should Matt be stalled for months on end to go after them on the municipal?
Can we check and see if they have noticed?
I'm pretty sure they haven't.
If they haven't noticed, then let's dismiss this case.
You
Exactly.
know what, hold on, can I go back to the?
Because they're not deemed complete if they haven't noticed.
I'll make a motion right now.
Yeah, we gotta, let's make sure.
No proof of service has been turned into me, so there's nothing.
Okay, Mr. Tropoli, legally, in order for them to even keep a date here, they have to be, the notice has to be complete, correct?
So it's gonna
If we can't prove that. If we don't have a notice and a proof of service, then how can we carry anything?
we can't.
Exactly.
Just be rescheduled.
So it'll have to be rescheduled.
Either
It's not a
that or
question-
file a new application if they
I
haven't noticed.
suppose you can dismiss it for being not in compliance with the rules of the MLUL, and that there's no notice.
He
Now, I
didn't
guess
ask- He didn't ask for it to be carried, he asked for it to be rescheduled to a different hearing date. And that's what I'm positive he has not done his notice.
Then why should we be rescheduling this?
well,
It's extending an application without,
Just
Being complete.
one other piece of evidence for the board. The application was filed November 8th, 2018.
I
So
know, it's been a long time.
It's been a year. They did come in quickly with the application, but it's been over a year just waiting.
Did they notice at that time?
No, they notice when I give them the hearing date. So they had a hearing date, which then they called and asked if they could be rescheduled, so they never noticed, we moved them. And then they were on tonight's, and then
Oh,
they
no,
called me, so.
we can't do that,
well,
Mr.
let me,
Tropoli.
Mr. Chairman, let me just so that there's a record on this entire matter, and to put the attorney on notice, why don't he be advised to be here at the next meeting we have in December? And at that point in time, he can make his argument, and we could tell him that the board is inclined to dismiss this application, but would give him an opportunity to be heard. I'm only thinking in terms of, I don't want to build in any kind of an appellate issue, although I don't think there would be, but rather than just, for example, take a vote tonight and say, the board's sentiment is to dismiss this period. And this way Matt can go forward. At least it would be a record, and that would be my opinion.
Okay,
I mean, but he's on thin ice as it is. Well, I understand, but I mean, my concern is that the applicant isn't here, and I think he has a right to be heard, right or wrong. Is he?
No, he's not. It's Mr. Vidiello from
Well, if he
Turner.
was, I would ask him to come up, but But I mean, my concern,
Planner is here, and I will relay this, and he'll already emailed it.
okay.
I mean, my concern is that this is a game that he's playing to delay the process and stall Matt's enforcement ability.
Well, if he hasn't noticed since November, and each time, how many times has he been carried throughout this year?
This is only the second hearing date that he's had.
No, I understand, but, second hearing date, no notification. He had no intention of even being heard.
Correct.
That's, can we just send him a letter to be here and be prepared, not to put his case on, but be prepared to argue why we should reschedule him?
Or, Mr. Tropoli, I'm prepared to make a motion, non-compliance with the MLUL, and make a motion to dismiss.
Is he not in compliance with the MLUL?
I would be cautious to do that tonight without the applicant's attorney being here. And
I agree with
respect-
Mr. Tropoli. We should just give him
Wait.
a chance.
Till November, or December 9th meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have him here, make
That's
sure
it.
his attorney's here, and he better have a good story.
I think we can relate to the applicant's attorney the sentiment of the board, and I'll work with Eileen on a letter, and that's it. And after that, if you want to entertain a motion at that time, I think at least this way, in terms of due process, if anyone has a concern with that, the board would be fair, the attorney can be heard, and then you can act the way you wish to act. That's it.
I agree.
Because I remember reading that carry to tonight's date. I remember reading that and saying no further notice would be required. So I, basically lied whenever I said that because he hadn't noticed. That's what's got me a little upset. Okay,
I have one
Okay.
other piece of correspondence, and this is from Mark Steinberg. He is the attorney for JAT Associates LLP.
okay.
He did notice for tonight, however, there are still some issues with their site plan, so he asked if the board would accept jurisdiction for tonight's meeting and then carry the application to our meeting of Monday, January 13th, 2020, without the need for a new notice to the surrounding property owners or new publication. And they are good till March 14th, so.
Okay, anyone in the audience for case number BA 19-13, JAT Associates LLP, or C? Okay, this case is going to be carried to January 21st?
No, 13th, January
13th? I
13th.
thought you said 21st.
No, 2020, I said.
13th, January 13th, 2020, with no further notice at 7:30 PM. Because we're making the notice right now.
And that's all I have for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay. First case, resolutions, case number BA 1915, Squonkam Fire Company, resolution granting use variance approval with minor site plan. Eligible voters, Hughes, Mertens, Roscoe, Saya, Cantor, Nansen. Do I have a motion to approve this?
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Saya,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Hughes. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Saya?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
And Chairman Nansen.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
Thank you. Case number BA 1919, Orchard Estates LLC and New Jersey American Water Company, Inc., granting a use variance approval. Eligible voters, Hughes, Mertens, Orozco, Saya, Cantor, and Nansen. Have a motion.
I'll move it, sir.
Motion by Mr. Saya,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Hughes. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Saya?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
And Chairman Nansen.
Yes.
Resolutions memorialized. Thank you.
Thank you. Applications before the board, case number BA 1833, Prince of Peace Lutheran Church extension of time request. Application of Prince of Peace Lutheran Church as applicant owner seeking extension of the minor subdivision approval granted by the board in resolution memorialized on 5/13/19 for premises known as Block 59, Lot 5, 434 Aldridge Road. Mr. Kaplan, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Alan Kaplan, the attorney for the Prince of Peace Church, for the record. We're requesting the extension of time. It came from our engineer. It's because of the sewer hookup and the DEP with the wetlands determination. He said that he needed some more time, that he's working on it, but these things take some more time than required. In the meantime, we did publish the resolution and had it recorded promptly as directed by the board.
Okay. Mr. Charlie, do you have anything on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So with the minor subdivision approval, one of the conditions was that the applicant had to obviously get approval from the township for extending the sewer main. Obviously, they had two residential lots that didn't have the minimum 40,000 square feet, for the septic. That's why it was required per the condition. Mr. Kaplan, the applicants made an application to the township for those approvals.
I understand that the engineer is handling those things. He's working on it.
Okay, so.
That's my understanding.
So the board can consider up to a one-year extension to the minor subdivision approval. They can also consider, a period less than that, equivalent to the time that any holdup from the outside agency approvals would be equal to. I think, obviously, it sounds like from Mr. Kaplan, the applicant's making a good faith effort to get those approvals. So, I would take no exception to granting a year extension. If the board should just.
Do you need the 1 year, or what do you think?
I don't know. That's what Mr. Geller, the engineer, said I should ask for, because
Okay.
based on what he needs and going through all this is beyond my purview. I don't know how long it takes. to tell you the truth.
How about the board? What's,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
I recommend that we make a motion to extend it for 1 year, as
Okay.
requested.
So a motion's on the table. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Mertens. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Moretti?
I abstain. Conflict of interest.
Okay.
Sorry. Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Saya?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Laughlin?
Yes.
And Chairman Nansen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
very
luck.
much. Well,
Yes,
have
sir.
a nice Thanksgiving.
You too, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next case before the board, case number BA 1836, 1294 Equities LLC. Use variance, preliminary and final major site plan. Application of 1294 Equities LLC is applicant and owner seeking a use variance and preliminary and final major site plan approval to construct a flex warehouse office space building and parking lot consisting of 12,000 square foot of warehouse space and 2,000 square foot of office space, along with widening and paving of existing gravel driveway and stormwater collection system, underground detention system, manufactured treatment device, new well, septic on premises known as Block 185, lots 1213, 1294, State Highway 33. This application was scheduled to be heard October 7th, 2019, when it was carried to November 25th, 2019. Expiration date, December 31st, 2019. Mr. Alfieri.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Dante Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. As the chairman stated so eloquently, we are here seeking a preliminary major site plan with a D variance and bulk variances. The property is located on 1294 Route 34, Block 185, lots 12 and 13. Tonight I'm going to have 4 individuals provide testimony. I'm going to start with the engineer, Mr. Seawald here. He's going to describe to the board the application and touch on the engineering aspects. Then we're going to get into the operation, then traffic, and then planning. We're
Why
gonna
don't we
keep it-
bring everybody up and get everybody sworn in? That way we don't have to stop in between.
Okay, would you raise your right hand, please? Swear the testimony you give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yeah.
I do. Sir, starting with you, may we have your name?
Andrew Japola, Jaffolla,
I'm sorry, can you give it again, last name?
Jaffolla.
Thank you. Some more?
Christine Cofone, Christiane, Cofone, CO, as in Frank, O-N-E.
Thank you.
Josh Seawald, Sewald, from Dynamic Engineering.
Thank you.
Michael Monroe, Monroe, architect.
Very good, we'll start.
Thank you.
Do you want us to put qualifications on the board?
Yes, sir, please do.
Mr. Sewell, please provide your qualifications for the board.
Certainly. Again, Josh Seawald from Dynamic Engineering Consultants. I prepared the plans that are before you this evening and on the monitors that are coming up right now. I have a Bachelor's in Science in Civil Engineering from Temple University, a Master's of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers University. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey and about 5 other states as well. I've been accepted as a PE for over 80 land use boards before the state of New Jersey, included Howell Planning Board, but this is my first opportunity before you guys tonight at the zoning board.
We accept your credentials, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Josh, can you orient the board to the site, what currently exists, and then what we are proposing?
Certainly. So, quick exhibit, this is just a colored version of the aerial plan that's part of the overall civil drawing set. Eileen, if you can go actually to sheet 2. I'm sorry, Matt.
It's okay. We're gonna have to mark this, though. Hold on.
So it's going to be A16.
Oh, thank you.
A16.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You need a sticker? Yeah.
Colorized version.
Right.
Alan, you have a sticker?
No, we can just write on it.
This one,
Yeah,
actually.
I'm sorry.
Too high.
No, we don't use stickers here.
Not too much,
Yep.
not here.
Why don't we mark? Dante, how many other exhibits do you have that you're presenting with the engineer? Why don't we mark them all?
Sure, there's
well-
just one more after that. It's the site plan rendering.
Okay, so if you would please place a description of A16 on the record as it's being marked, please?
Josh?
Yes.
Yes,
Provide a
A16,
description of A16.
describe what that is, just so we can mark it in.
Sure, is aerial map exhibit prepared by Dynamic Engineering dated August 26, 2019. And it's the same image that you have before you on the board.
Okay,
Do you want the name of the second one as well?
why not? Let's call that one A17.
Sure. That is entitled Site Plan Rendering by Dynamic Engineering, dated October 7th, 2019. That plan, which I'll get to shortly after describing the existing conditions, is the site plan overlaid onto the landscape plan and then colored for rendering purposes.
All right, all marked.
No, this is Hungry Puppy. This is right next door to Hungry Puppy. There is a lot of wet right in here.
So the image that is on the same screen is actually the same image that's mounted here, again referencing A16. The property as described, 1294 Route 33, is currently a unique shaped lot. I'll call it a polygon and almost a flag shape, meaning that we have limited frontage on 33, and the bulk of the remaining of the land is actually behind another property that has the majority of the frontage on Route 33. Out there today, if you've been by the site, has a 2-story, 1,200 square foot dwelling that's there, some gravel that's in front of it. Like I mentioned, there's a unique shaped property. It has limited frontage on 33, 106 feet along Route 33, where the underlying zone, which is the HD3 Highway Development Zone, typically requires a minimum of 150 feet. So the existing lot is not conforming with the frontage of the property on Route 33. Further, there's some wetlands impacted on the property. Almost the entirety of the western side property line, where you see the existing trees right now, are inhabited by freshwater wetlands. Further, there's wetlands boundaries surrounding 2 other sides as well on the property. So overall, We are set back from Route 33 because Lot 14, which was formerly a bar and then a power wash company, I believe it's vacant right now. That property sits in front of us on Route 33. It's uniquely shaped, and there are some wetlands on both sides of the parcel. To the north of us, again, like I mentioned, is Route 33 and Lot 14. To the south of us is farmland within the HD3 zone. To the east of us is Tice Road with a couple residential dwellings on there, all located still within the HD3 zone. And to the west of us, across the wetlands, is the Hungry Puppy, as everybody knows. And out there today, there is no stormwater management facilities. It's just a home with some gravel parking lot in front of it. Moving right along to A17, which is our site plan rendering. Mr. Howard, if you wouldn't mind putting up the site plan. And again, the board that I have to me on my right is the same exact exhibit that you have in front of you, but it's just colored. So the darker gray that you see before you is the building. The lighter gray is the new paved parking lot area and driveway that will go out to Route 33. If you're looking at my rendering, the building is in orange, same color gray for the pavement, and then everything else is colored in green to show whether it's existing wetlands, trees, or new grass and landscaping. So to go through quickly the new proposal, we're looking at proposing a 13,000 square foot, 13,687 square foot flex warehouse. Internal to that building, we'll have a 2,000 square foot internal office and 3 bays. You'll hear shortly between myself as well as the traffic engineer. The intent and the owner of the property owns a construction utility company and wants to bring their construction sites to the property, but instead of just leaving it on a gravel parking area, we'll bring it into this facility that's about 13,000 square feet and change. The building was designed kind of in the only location that could be situated due to the unique shape of the property. As you see along the western side property line, starting next to the Hungry Puppy, you see the trees that are identified. Then we have wetlands buffer. Then you see the new two-way access aisle that gets out to Route 33. Then we start a smaller parking area, the front 3 bays that go to the building. And then on the northern side of our proposed building, totaling is about 28 parking spaces, which is compliant with your zoning ordinance for parking standards for this use. Again, we have two-way circulation that come in and out of Route 33 and that go around the building. We have a full movement driveway proposed on Route 33, no restrictions. Our DOT permit is currently pending. The site was designed to accommodate the trucks that the owner of the construction company will bring to the site. Those are non-articulating trucks, so you'll have some box trucks, maybe some flatbeds, and really the operation of this person's company, whatever his 8 to 10 employees come to the site with their own personal vehicles, they may take some of their other pickup trucks that will be staged on site. But the building itself will house the larger trucks that will come in through the bays and stay inside the building. Moving further along kind of into the site design standards, we do provide 2 underground detention basins with an 80% TSS manufactured treatment device used for water quality. That will be collected on site and then discharged into the wetlands. There will be a new gas and electric service. As mentioned earlier in the application when Mr. Chairman was announcing, there is going to be a potable well. There is no water main in this section of Route 33 currently, and we will have a brand new septic facility to support this. Overall landscaping on the site, out there today, again, it's the house and just some gravel parking lot. There is a lot of existing wetlands to the west, some existing trees along the southern and eastern side and rear property lines. We're going to try to add some landscaping there, 15 shade trees, 14 ornamental trees, and over 100 evergreen shrubs provided around the parking area and the building. So the intent of that was to try to buffer as much as we can in the southern and the eastern side, which is where the farmland and the residents are, but also try to provide low-level hedges around the parking area.
Real quick, where the building is on your east side,
Yes,
where your property line comes up,
yes.
that property right next to it, is that a farm?
Lots 5 and 6 are residential, and then
Which on here
right
is
at that
lot
corner.
5 and 6?
On the east.
5 and 6 is residential, which is the easternmost property line. And then lot 17, which is to the south of us, is the farm.
Okay, so lot 17, I don't have a,
Does lot 17 go up next to the building where it juts in?
I'm looking for the lot numbers.
survey's here, right there.
It's tax lot 11, so you have 5,
Sheet 4 has it.
Mr. Chairman, starting at the northeastern corner of the side property line, you have 2 residential lots.
Oh,
Lot
okay,
5, 6, and then the little notch out that comes into our property, that's tax lot 11. And then
yeah, lot 11, what is that? Is that a Q farm?
No, please correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Beam, but I believe that is a house, and as you can see.
Yeah, 11's a house.
Yep, and as you can see, correct. So
Okay.
lot 11, this is
Okay,
all
so
trees.
technically, that east side, there's no farm. Jen?
Correct, but
they Okay.
still need a perimeter buffer.
Yeah, no, they're only 12 foot as it is.
Correct.
And what are they required? 50 foot?
Setback, it's 50 plus a setback.
Yeah.
So we require a buffer from residential of 50 feet, and our setbacks are measured from the buffer line. So they require additional 25 feet on that side for the side yard setback, in addition to the 50-foot buffer.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I was going to get to that in a
No,
little
I know,
bit.
I'm just
But it's okay, we could jump
trying
ahead.
to find out where the farms are.
So
That's
real
what I'm
quick,
doing.
just to confirm Ms. Beam's testimony, lot 5 and 6 is residential.
Okay,
Lot 11 is further residential, and then lot 17, which is to the south of
Right,
us,
correct.
is farmland. And I'll get to why we tucked the building as up here towards lot 11 versus lot 17 or 5 and 6.
Okay.
So referencing back to A16, just to kind of address that question before I go back to the remainder of my direct, Mr. Chairman.
well,
Lot 7.
my question is that okay, the power washing place, isn't that a commercial?
That's on the other side, that's in front of it.
From the front side.
No, I understand that. That's still commercial property, correct?
That is a,
That's not what he's talking about.
I understand, but the setbacks are different for commercial to commercial, correct?
It's not so much the setback is different, it's that they don't require a buffer on top of the setback.
Okay,
Yes.
but what I'm saying is, you got the parking lot towards the commercial side, you got the building towards the residential side.
No,
That's what I'm...
because the end of that parking lot, by the little point there, Josh, where the point on lot 11 comes in, that's residential. So that parking lot is very close to that residential lot.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, the building is only 12 foot off of that.
it's actually 25. The 12-foot dimension, Mr. Chairman, is the parking lot.
Right,
edge.
I see that.
And again,
The building is 25, the parking lot is 12.
Correct.
But what I'm looking at, if you go directly towards 33 from your property line,
Yes.
due north, that's a commercial property, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you have a 25-foot setback. I'd rather have the parking lot off of the residential in the building. You see what I'm talking about?
Not really. I mean, the parking lot is 10 point something feet off that lot line as it is, correct? It's like
Which is
10
also-
point,
Correct, which is also a variance.
correct, so,
I understand, but, okay. I don't want to redesign it right here. I really don't. But it'd be better if the building was closer to the commercial property, and then the parking lot be designed out there. If they flipped it, then you're going to get away from the residential.
So
I mean, they're gonna need relief no matter which way you slice
I
it.
know, but
I
I'd
guess
rather
it's up
have a
to you.
minor relief.
I understand that, but so at the end of the day, you're gonna have to determine first of all, you have to determine whether or not the use is appropriate, right? That's why we're here.
That's the most important
And
thing,
then
right.
secondly, if you get over that hurdle that the use is appropriate, then when we get into the site plan aspect of it, whether you want the parking lot adjacent to the commercial, I mean, let's be honest, lots 5 and 6 has a pretty significant buffer setback, correct?
Correct, and Mr. Chairman, I promised I was going to get there, why we designed the site the way that it was.
Okay.
And I appreciate your candid concern right now about possibly tweaking the design, and Jen was just about to answer why we laid it out. So,
I was not, but.
so what I think she was about to get to is lots 5 and 6, which are the 2 residential lots. We tried to provide a 50-foot buffer. So I'm not talking about the point, I'm talking about the 187-foot easternmost side property line that you see on the board. Those two lots, 5 and 6, the houses on Tice Road are the closest to our development. So we took that eastern line and we went 50 feet, and we said, we're not putting anything in here. Then, as we decided to work on the rest of the layout, we were constrained to our driveway on Route 33, based on the wetlands and the wetlands buffer that's currently on the western side. So we brought our driveway down, and we noticed that we had two property lines left. The south, which is to the farmland, Lot 17, and then we had this funky Lot 11 that kind of chamfered into the middle of our site. Lot 11, although, yes, you are correct, has a residential building on it, is much further away from our property. So we decided to try to provide a larger buffer to farmland, which we know is important in Howell, and move the building closer towards the point of that property because it is uniquely shaped, which you'll hear from our planner at the end of the night about unique shape and how that meets the C1 and C2 kind of criteria of that variance. So I want you to know it was thoughtfully laid out.
Okay.
The lot 5 and 6, 50-foot residential buffer, and again, going back to A16, that eastern side property line is closer to two residential structures on Tice Road. Lot 11, which also is residential again, and has that same buffer and setback standard, the house is much further away from Tice Road, over 1,000 feet. You can see on the aerial, it's just packed with an existing forest. So we figured it was already naturally buffered. Due to the unique shape of the property and our wetlands constraints and the flag lot and the minimum area we have for the driveway, the building was best to be located where it's currently shown on the site plan. And then what we have left in order to keep our clients and the applicant, I should say the owner of the construction company's trucks inside this building, we ended up with this 13,000 square foot footprint, and we tried to provide a 50-foot buffer to the farmland. That's how we laid out this site. Now, you'll hear shortly the variances that we have on the project, but that's why it was laid out the way that it was laid out.
Okay.
And I want you, the board, to know, and the professionals, that all of those different buffers and criteria were reviewed. Some things had to be tweaked, and that's why the variances on the application.
Okay.
So before we got into all the variance and the layout of the site, we were talking about landscaping. Just want to quickly go into lighting. We do have 6 LED area light poles spread throughout the property. 9 of them are also wall packs. And that kind of wraps up the general layout of the site. We went through landscaping, we went through new utilities, we went through stormwater management. We do have a few permits associated with the site, and I can go through them briefly before we get into the professional review letters. We have Freehold Soil Conservation District approval, one of the major stormwater reviews and hurdles in New Jersey, so we have their certification. Monmouth County Planning Board is pending. It's going to be a letter of exemption. Septic will be approved if we get approved at this board, so we need you guys first before Howell Health Department will then allow us to go to Monmouth County Health Department to sign off on that. And then lastly is NJDOT, currently pending for that driveway permit, and our wetlands delineation. We have an LOI, letter of interpretation, on the property, and then we have a few other permits: transition area waiver, general permit 6A, and general permit 10A. So there are some wetlands and some buffers on the property that we are manipulating with our site plan. We do anticipate to get approvals for all of them. So in summary, that's why it's laid out the way that it is. Before I get into any of the review letters, happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Charlie?
So, Josh, you said you have applications pending. Would you be able to provide a copy of the applications just for the board's records so they can have some comfortability with reviewing the application?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then as far as, there's some waivers required for the application, so you did have some curb across part of the frontage on the radius on the west side of the driveway. Would you have an issue, or the applicant have an issue with putting a radius on the east side tying into curb that's to be installed with, there was a site plan approved for the property, Mr. Hegarty's, on Route 33 there. Would you have an issue with tying into that, or the applicant have an issue with that?
I won't only, we don't have an issue as long as the condition as if that property is not developed, to not provide the curb. So that's why we didn't provide it. So the western side radius we provided with the face form curb along our frontage, and then to the east, we kind of just tied the concrete into what's remaining on us. So with the condition that when the site comes in, we'll provide that to tie into it. Or you're looking to do it even if that person doesn't?
Yes,
permit
I
it?
would like to see it, so that way it's a delineated radius and people aren't going off the edge of the road, cutting a corner, and we don't have like a, water sitting on the edge of the road issue there. You also, applicant needs a waiver for sidewalk along the right-of-way, and then also tying the site to the right-of-way. Township recently passed an ordinance for commercial properties. If the applicant's seeking a waiver for sidewalk, they must, if the board does grant it, make a contribution to a sidewalk pedestrian fund. Will the applicant agree to make contribution to that if the board were considerable to grant the waiver?
Certainly, it's in the New Jersey State Highway 33 corridor. If they don't, let's say the DOT doesn't want it for some reason, the applicant would be happy to provide that contribution.
Have you looked at the adjacent properties? There's no sidewalk on the adjacent
There
properties?
isn't sidewalks at the Hungry Puppy, and I don't believe even the new site plan that came in for Lot 14 had sidewalk either. We do have some wetlands and wetlands buffers that may also complicate that sidewalk installation in the right-of-way.
And then the applicant's requesting a waiver for a 2,000-foot downstream analysis. Have you looked at the drainage characteristics of the general area and, what impact your proposed development or the applicant's proposed development is having downstream of the site?
In my opinion, the impact is negligible because the site is designed to comply with 7:8. We have Freehold Soil Conservation District approval, and our 2 underground detention systems where there are currently no systems at all. And then we're also providing a water quality device to clean the water before it goes downstream. It gets discharged, and there's about another 150 feet before it leaves our property. So in my opinion, it's going to go through a flatland area, wetlands transition, wetlands where it may just sit actually and then naturally go into the groundwater table. I don't believe a downstream analysis will be applicable on this kind of project. If we were tying into a stream or tying into maybe a culvert that was negatively impacted based on history in the town, absolutely it's a great idea. We're seeking the waiver though because the site is going to provide 2 underground basins, treat the water, and then discharge it slowly through a concentrated point through about 150 feet of vegetation, dense forest. So I don't think it'll end up impacting the downstream.
And then,
Okay.
so you're asking for a waiver also for the main driveway to the site. For commercial properties, the township ordinance requires a 30-foot driveway. Can you speak to any constraints relating to, I think you propose a 24-foot wide driveway where 30 foot's required? Can you speak to that?
Certainly. So we, as Charlie just mentioned, we have a 24-foot driveway coming from Route 33, coming back onto our site. Our wetlands are right up against the property. We would love to have the driveway to be bigger, but honestly, the DEP will not allow any further disturbance to go into that property. We've maximized it in our opinion. The DEP has also agreed that we've maximized it. We do increase it to 25 feet on site for circulation purposes, but we cannot meet that 30 feet requirement. It would then go into we are disturbing previously disturbed gravel drive that's out there today that services the house, expanding it to as much as we can, and only disturbing within the transition area buffer. Going 5 feet from, 6 feet, 24 to 30 would then go into the freshwater wetlands. So I think the waiver can be reviewed and warranted based on the fact that we do have wetlands right next door to us.
I know we're going to get into the letters from the fire department and everything. Have y'all consulted the fire department?
We haven't met with them personally yet, but we've submitted that same information, that the 30 feet cannot be provided here, regardless of this type of application. It has nothing to do with our building or our layout. A 30-foot drive out will not be permitted here, based on the wetlands that are there.
Okay, so we haven't heard, you haven't gotten a reply back from the fire department?
No, we have their initial review where it has that concern from them, but we have not got another review letter back stating they're okay with it.
Okay.
So also, the driveway doesn't meet the 30-foot minimum setback from property lines. Can you speak to that?
It's a similar discussion, but basically, we have 106 feet on Route 33. The majority of it is impacted by freshwater wetlands. So there's an existing driveway out there today that we're trying to expand upon that to service this warehouse, flex warehouse building with office. So it is unfortunately pinned next to Lot 14, our commercial development neighbor. Your ordinance asks for a 30-foot waiver, 30-foot setback. So providing a 30-foot setback to Lot 14, a 30-foot driveway will put us in the middle of the 106 feet of frontage on 33, and that will not be permitted by the DEP for the wetlands reasons. So we do have some existing environmental constraints to comply with here, which is why we're seeking those waivers.
And then as far as the driveway itself, so can you talk about the existing driveway as compared to the proposed? You know, is it gravel and you're now paving it and putting in curbs? Are you anticipating any impact to adjacent properties? I can tell you there's an approved site plan for lot 14 to the north, obviously for Mr. Haggerty. That's a power washing business. He got some approvals to store his equipment inside. They were approved to install a basin on the west side of their property that drains to the wetlands on their property. At some point, that area is low-lying. It's a wetlands for a reason, but, it then flows downstream. Do you anticipate any issues with cutting off drainage across your driveway? What are any measures taken by the applicant to maintain the natural drainage course, not cause an issue for your neighbor?
Certainly. So that definitely came up in your professional review letter. We're on, I believe, Rev 3 of our site plan drawings. Part of that was providing a flush curb along a portion of the driveway to allow the stormwater overflow from Lot 14, Mr. Haggerty's property, to go over our paved driveway and then back into the wetlands as was previously approved and kind of operating under existing conditions. I don't believe our driveway will impact that further. It's also subject to review by the DEP. If they had, say, any major concern with stormwater going from our paved driveway into the wetlands, that we would have to comply with those regulations. But from a municipal standpoint, I believe we're accommodating our neighbor's drainage runoff over our driveway with a curb cut, essentially. It'll look like a flush curb to allow his stormwater discharge over our driveway into the wetlands.
There's
Charlie, will that create a sort of like a river type situation there? It's all condensed down into a cut and then flowing across?
So I think the applicant currently is provided on the east side of the driveway, Josh can correct me, I'm speaking off the top of my head here, like a 30-foot wide curb cut, and then along the western side, there might be a 5-foot curb cut with some, riprap stone across it.
Correct.
Certainly, there's definitely going to be some channelization of the water. Right now, you have 150 feet of common property line there where, water would then overflow the entire driveway for 150 feet, say. Now you're concentrating that to, 5 feet. Anytime you're putting curb along a frontage 6 inches high, there's a concern with damming it up, cause an issue for the neighbor. Josh, did the applicant look at any other means of providing, relief to make sure the water gets across there, possibly a culvert or anything of that nature?
Unfortunately, I think due to grading, we can't provide a culvert. It's definitely the easiest way to mitigate drainage is to provide a catch basin, put it under a pipe underneath the driveway, and then discharge it out. We'd have to fill the driveway a few feet above what the existing grade of the wetlands are, which would then create possible more disturbance, retaining walls. I don't really think it's practical on this case. What I will say is that the approvals for Lot 14, they do have an above-ground basin that's walled, and then there's an outlet control structure that discharges to riprap. So I don't want you to think that there's going to be a river kind of flowing out of this basin. It is designed to reduce the rate that's currently coming out of this site. So when or should this ever be redeveloped, whatever is coming onto our site today by Lot 14 should be reduced. And then further, our site, which has no stormwater management, will be collecting majority of it and then further reducing rates again. So I do agree with Charlie that channelizing it across a paved driveway you're going to see sheet flow across it, absolutely. You're going to see that water. But I think overall it will be an improvement should Lot 14 be developed in conjunction with our lot being developed as well.
See, my next question leading up to that is what happens in the wintertime when that freezes over? You're going to dump tons of salt that's going to run right straight into the wetlands. No filterization or anything.
Again, it's a pretty small area. The entire the roof, the parking lot, and a majority of that 24-foot aisle is collected and then is brought back to our detention basin. The area that is going across this pavement area, whether we dump down salt, is small, which is why the DEP is going to allow it. It's an
Okay, so
improvement in their eyes.
that's based on DEP approvals for that to do, right, Char?
Yeah, so they're obviously gonna, Mr. Seawald indicated they've made applications to DEP for their LOI and then also their general permits. Obviously, they're filling in the wetlands and they're also doing a transition buffer averaging. They are providing a stormwater management basin for the main parking area of the building, the bulk of the site, which has detention and also a manufacturer treatment device, which they provided calculations, showing that they can meet the 80% TSS removal. However, the concern you've raised, I think, is a valid one. There's the main site driveway, because of the topography, naturally just drains to the wetlands. So, I would assume that would be something that DEP would look at with regards to the site plan, filling in the wetlands there. Just based on the topography and the proposed elevations for the site, you're kind of fighting two battles, I think, with that one. Raise the driveway to get water to pitch to your on-site basin and then potentially cause a drainage issue for your neighbor, cutting off their flow across your driveway. I think it would be something that we could defer to DEP with the Jeep general permits, so.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, Char? That it?
For now, yeah.
Okay. Jen?
Josh, are you going to talk about, I know you spoke briefly about the lighting, but you do need relief for the lighting, correct?
Yeah, so I figure we go through waivers, any questions from the board, and then I go through your review letters. And I can touch on the lighting pretty quickly. Your ordinance asks for half a foot candle
Correct.
average. And we redesigned the site again after the initial submission to get it down to 0.83 foot candles.
They did. It was 2.74, and they revised it to 0.83. So they do need relief. I would take no exception. I think the 0.5 is a little low. And I know that Matt has that on his list of ordinances that need to be revised by the township. So you do need relief technically, but I would take no exception. I just wanted to get it on the record, correct?
Absolutely.
Are you going to talk about like the operations of this building and like the hours of operation, the number of employees, the type of,
Yes, we're going to get into that.
is this the right witness?
The next witness can handle that.
Okay.
So I touched on the items that affected site plan. You'll hear from the traffic engineer more about the trucks and employees and times, and then you'll also hear from the architect about how the building's going to work in the bays.
All right, so can we talk about trash?
Sure.
Can you tell me how that's going to work?
Everything will be collected inside. So the couple trash receptacles, and here, the employee count is about 10 to 12. 8 to 10 of them come on site. They bring their personal truck. They pick up one of the contractor's utility trucks, and they go out to the job site, leaving their personal truck on there. The small office that's part of this 13,000 square foot building will have one, maybe two admin staff there, and the small paper or lunch trash that is generated will go into one receptacle in the building that will stay inside the building. We don't anticipate any major trash generation like a typical retail commercial use would have. Should there be any kind of, say, I don't know, pallets or plastic or something that comes along on a truck, that will all be recycled and then brought back out by a private hauler.
But where you, like, how? So, great, you're keeping it inside, but how's this private hauler getting it? Where are they getting it from? Is there going to be, like, a trash enclosure? Like, what? I get that you're collecting it inside, but ultimately, if someone comes in to collect it, how is that going to work?
Yeah, we didn't anticipate needing a typical 10 by 10 or 10 by 20 trash facility outside where that truck would come. We would anticipate they would use one of the 3 bays and grab it when they come into the building. They would open up the door, staff would come out, give them the receptacle, because we don't anticipate a major trash generation. If it's a major concern of the board, I can certainly find a space located in the northeast corner. We'd either provide it on this landscape island or provide a small 10 by 10 right behind the 10 parking spaces.
I'm not suggesting that you need an enclosure, but what I am suggesting is if your testimony is that the trash and the recycling and everything is going to be held inside and then handled in that way, if the board were to act favorably, I would recommend a condition that there absolutely be nothing outside. And if there is something outside, then the applicant would be subject to some, a violation by code for non-compliance. Because what I do not want to have happen, and I've seen happen in other warehouse applications, is that there's crap all over the place waiting to be picked up. So I would say, Dante, to you, as we move forward with the application tonight, just think about how you want to handle that ultimately, because if you want an enclosure, I'm going to ask for it to be masonry, and I'm going to ask for it to be located to make sure that it's okay.
Yep.
But if you're planning on handling inside, better, that's a better scenario, you don't have it, but if the board were to act favorably moving forward, I would recommend a condition that absolutely no outdoor storage of any kind of refuse, recycling, nothing. Because it gets blown away, the site winds up looking crappy, like that's something that we're not interested in having happen, especially considering you have residences located pretty close to the site. So, I mean, it's up to you guys how you want to handle it, but I just want the board to know how you're planning on dealing with that moving forward.
We have it noted, we'll speak with the client at some point throughout this application.
Understood.
And we'll address it.
Okay. I'm assuming that, like, the roof is going to be the architect, correct?
Yes.
And the architect is going to talk about the hours of operation, visitors, et cetera?
I can touch on it. You'll hear again more from traffic and the architect, but basically, it's a construction company. They'll be getting there earlier in the morning between, the hours of 5 and 9, dropping their truck off, taking their work truck, and then they usually end a little bit earlier too, 3, 4, 5 o'clock when the utility jobs and the road jobs are over. The office staff is closer to, 8 to 5, 8 to 5:30.
What was I'm sorry, the
initial-
afternoon drop-off of the construction people, like 3, you said?
Anywhere between 3 and 5, depends
3
on
and
when
5,
the
okay.
job ends.
And do you anticipate any of the construction vehicles being stored outside?
There could be, yes. And when I say construction vehicles, I mean anything that fits within the space of a typical 10 by 20 parking space. So you might have a pickup truck, that they may have, say, a Bobcat, but the larger vehicles are intended to be inside those 3 bays and inside the building.
So typically, the board wants to know what type of vehicles will be routinely stored outside and the number, and that's something that has historically been put in any resolution. So given that, typically we have like operational testimony from the actual operator, so given that you're providing the testimony, I would just say, at some point during the course of the night, the board is going to ask how many vehicles, what kind of vehicles are going to be stored outside. And I understand you say the bigger are typically stored inside.
Yeah.
That's not going to cut it. So they're either inside or they're not inside. So that has to be clarified, because that's something that the board typically lays out and then enumerates in a resolution. So that's something that we're going to need clarification on.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just jump back in real quick. So, Josh, you guys are proposing a septic system for the site.
Yes.
So have you looked at any prior approvals for any of the adjacent properties as far as public sanitary that's planned or currently in the works down Route 33?
Yeah, we know it's approved. I don't believe it's anywhere near close to being installed. We have no problem connecting to it when it's installed, but right now, in order to support the application, assuming that the sewer line's not installed, we have to go with septic.
So I can tell you right now that the sewer line is currently being installed in Route 33. Where sewer is available, I think, that's a discussion the board needs to have. The
You
applicant.
said water too?
Septic, I know sanitary is definitely be installed. Matt, do you know if water's?
Water line too. It's both.
So again, just for the board's knowledge and the professionals, any developer, including my client that I'm representing tonight, would prefer connecting to a water main and a sanitary sewer main. They would prefer that well over maintaining a septic facility and a potable well. So we would be happy to condition the approval should both mains come within Route 33, that we would provide connection. Due to the grading of the property, I anticipate a grinder pump and then a force main connecting out to that sanitary sewer main.
Okay, but you'd agree to that condition in the applicant for
Absolutely.
both? Okay. That's all I have, Mr.
All right, so nothing further. I'm going to have Mr. Seawald touch on,
Hang on, any questions from the board? This witness? No. None? Okay.
so first we'll start with T&M's report. the most recent revision, October 7th, 2019.
Correct.
Now, I know we've touched on several comments already.
Why don't we just go down by numbers?
Okay, I'd like to start sheet 4, item B, variance waivers and items of discussion. I think we went through the waivers already with Charlie, but we'll just briefly go through. So B1 at the bottom of sheet 4, minimum lot frontage, 150 feet is required, 106 exists. That is existing nonconformity. The second is a use variance for the flex warehouse. We do have a planner that will go into further the positive and negative criteria of that. Then the last comment at the bottom is more of just confirmation the proposed office is in conjunction to the flex warehouse. So it's just the admin area to support the flex office warehouse.
So, Josh, just a quick question. So on that topic, so there is a mezzanine space, right, a second floor mezzanine space. Is that solely just going to be warehouse use, or is there any proposed other use?
It's all warehouse, so it's to house any of the equipment that may be associated with the utility installation company. Maybe some extra pipe will be inside, or storage of boxes. It's not meant to be any kind of light manufacturing, or it's really everything to support a utility construction company.
Okay. So what I would just suggest, if you want to breeze through real quickly, a lot of the stuff you've already touched upon as far as variances and things like that.
Sure, so I think B and C, those are the variances that Charlie and Jen were talking about before, where the rear yard setback we're required is essentially 50 feet farm buffer on top of 25. So essentially a 75-foot building setback to the southern property line. We currently have 50 feet. That's the first variance. The side yard variance, which is to the east, is a 50-foot residential buffer and a 25-foot side yard setback. Also combined becomes 75 feet. Now, what I was talking to you about before is the variance is actually tied to two property lines. It is the eastern property line to, I want to make sure I say the lots correctly.
Josh, can I just ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Are these things that Christine is going to testify to when she gets up here?
She is,
Okay, so I get it, we went through it, and I'm just trying to the board is not big on redundancy, so if she's gonna testify to it, let's just stick to the items in Charlie's letter that are engineering related that you haven't touched upon.
That's okay.
We don't generally go through the letters verbatim, so if there's things in here that you feel you need to discuss, that's probably a better use of the board's time than regurgitating what she's gonna come up here and testify to later.
yeah, no problem. I think
Okay.
we also touched on B and C anyway. We
Agreed.
talked in length about how the site was laid out and talked about those variances to the residential and farmland.
All right, so let's touch on some of the waivers that we did not discuss already.
I do need to touch on a couple, though. So like item D, parking setback. Yes, Christine's going to talk about it, but from an engineering standpoint, we have not touched that yet. The HD3 zone has a comment about 50 feet between different properties for setbacks of parking. So our northern property owner, Lot 14, our parking lot comes within 10 feet and change of their property. So we need a variance for not being 50 feet. The support that I provided earlier, talking about the side yard setbacks for the farmland and the residential, how we laid out the site, we thought it was the least detrimental to provide the parking lot closer to our commercial neighbor than pushing other site improvements to residential and the farmland. Lighting average we talked about. Item F, buffers and screens, I believe is addressed. Item G talks about the 50-foot wide four-season buffer between the residential and commercial projects, project developments. So we do provide a 50-foot residential buffer to lots 5 and 6, that's on the eastern side property line. Where the point of the property comes on lot 11, we do not provide that buffer. Again, the earlier testimony was there's a lot of existing forest and vegetation out there. So there's a natural buffer that's there that will shield the building. The other part of that ordinance talks about the type of buffer, berming and a 10-foot high fence. We do not have a 10-foot high fence. We have tried to enhance that buffer with landscaping. If the board would like a 10-foot fence, we can certainly review that condition. I don't know if we have the room necessarily to do a 6-foot berm, which is the other half of that. So we do need a variance relief for the type of buffer that's behind our building. Number of signs will be discussed by architect and then the planner, which is on page 6, item H. Item I it falls underneath civil engineering. It is the sign setback. We do have a sign that's located at the driveway of Route 33 to identify the driveway. That sign does not comply with your ordinance for setback. We're proposing 5 feet to the property line where 20 feet is required. Essentially, I wouldn't mind the 20 feet if I can clear the trees and the land that's up there so you could see it while driving down Route 33. Due to the wetlands and the wetlands buffer, we have to keep the sign closer to the property line in order for you to actually see it when you're driving on Route 33.
Jen, real quick on that, isn't the DOT involved with that? Or does that mean,
No, because it's on their property.
it is on their property?
So I would venture to guess that we're going to hear testimony from the planner that talks about the fact that the sign needs to be visible for traffic safety purposes. And based upon that issue, the location is going to be set.
Okay.
But the DOT only deals with things in their right-of-way. So this is
Okay.
on the town's property, or on the applicant's property.
Okay.
So no, they would not be involved.
Okay,
And then going to item 3, waivers. I believe we discussed the waivers with Charlie. Articulation. Moving right along to sheet 8, we talked about curbing on Route 33.
okay, you're gonna get back to us on sheet 7, item C, the garbage.
Yes.
Yes,
You're gonna get back to us on
we'll
that.
clarify that for you. Sheet 8, curbing, we discussed.
Before you
Sorry.
go,
Yeah, no problem.
B, the driveway requirement aisle widths.
So
We
we
need
discussed
to
that
hear-
before. 24 foot is what we're proposing. We
Right.
can't get to 30 because of our
We
wetlands.
understand that, but we also need to hear from the fire department. We need to hear what they have, their comments.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, we got a couple things.
Okay,
And just to further, if that would be a major sticking point tonight before a possible vote could happen, please note, fire code requires 20-foot aisles. I understand our ordinance your ordinance and Howell is looking for 30 feet, but fire code asks for 20-foot access aisles, which we do comply with. And we have a truck circulation plan in our civil set that shows the fire truck safely entering the site and exiting out. So again, I just need to work with the fire marshal, but I think they'll understand after that. I know you can't hang your hat on that, but I just want you to know it has been reviewed and looked at.
okay,
Yeah, they usually.
move forward to sheet 8.
As no newer comment.
Curbing along the
So,
frontage.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just jump in again. So, located the initial fire review, it's dated December 17 of 2018. So they did say they had no objections, but some of the comments that they did indicate, obviously, that roadways should be designed to be minimum 30-foot wide. So obviously, they haven't complied with that. Are there any gates proposed, Josh? that
Not
would
right now, no.
impede access? They also said that, for a building of this size and based on the occupancy that's being proposed, they'd like to see sprinkler systems, obviously, inside the building. And then, I think, Josh, and you can speak to this, are the lanes, the main driveway and all the internal aisles, are they striped for fire lanes? Like you have signage for no parking in the aisle or anything like that?
We don't right now. We actually typically wait for them to mark up exactly what they want, but we will certainly condition the approval on providing whatever yellow fire lane striping and no parking fire lane signage they want throughout the parking.
Mr. Chairman, I would think that it would be prudent. I think they should provide signage and then also striping along the main driveway, especially if they're asking for relief from, the main 30-foot driveway requirement. Same thing internal to the site. Are you going to talk about, or is the traffic engineer going to talk about internal circulation to the site?
We
How many
both.
vehicles are anticipated, what type, and, is there any, like, stacking or queuing anticipated on that main driveway that might impede access, emergency access to the site, or anything like that?
I think it's 50-50, and I'll explain why. Yeah, the number of cars in and out of the site, our traffic engineer is going to talk about that along with the traffic study they provided. But I think I testified to earlier that the site was designed based on how we know the operator is going to use this property. The 24-foot aisle comes right into the front of the building where the 3 bays are. There's a few spaces over there, but we anticipate those larger trucks to go into the building. The other parking area that comes around the northeastern portion, where the larger facility is, that's where we anticipate our 8 to 12 employees to park and have those trucks. Again, queuing, I'll defer to my traffic engineer, but this is a low-intense traffic use. This is really a staging place for the operator, the construction company, to have his trucks, have a place for his staff to be, hold some materials inside, and then get back out to the job site.
There's no, it's not for public access, correct?
Yeah, we don't anticipate, it's not like a retail development where we anticipate customers coming to the site.
Respectfully, you're asking for a use variance for a warehouse. You're not asking for a use variance for a user. So, all those things may be absolutely appropriate for your particular client at this particular moment. But the board needs to look long-term. Like, let's say this user leaves the property and somebody else comes in that is a different type of warehouse user. So I would just say to the board, I'm not taking exception to the testimony, but it needs to be very clear when if the board were to act favorably on the application, that the conditions associated with any type of approval be very specific in terms of use, employees, no public, et cetera, because should this applicant leave the property, the use variance runs with the land. It doesn't run with the applicant. So another user can come in to use a warehouse at this location to have a very different operational type model that could be very different. So I'm not suggesting that that's what's going to happen here, but I'm just saying to the board that anything that happens, if you're looking to approve this application, we just need to make sure that there's conditions in the resolution that limit the use of this property based upon these representations, given
Exactly.
the constraints of the environmental and the residential around it, et cetera.
That way, if the ownership does change, the new owner would have to come forward with the...
And if they wanted to change any of these issues, they would have to come back to this board
Correct.
and present testimony as to why they wanted to change these issues, as opposed to just a global approval for a warehouse at this location.
And we have no issue with that. We're going to get into the numbers of employees,
Okay.
numbers of trucks, so we are going to provide testimony that's going to
Okay.
kind of parentheses this type of application.
Okay.
Let's get back into this sheet. We're on sheet 8 right now.
Correct.
Those are pretty much already answered.
All right.
I do believe we answered E, F, and G. G will be discussed, the facade exterior walls by the architect.
Correct.
General items of discussion, I believe all of 6 is everything we just mentioned. Operations, provide as much as possible. I gave you a little bit, you'll hear more from the traffic engineer and the architect. Item 7, if we comply with the parking standards. Item 8, we have to comply with state ordinance and the township standards for meeting the sound requirements at property lines next to residential. Item 9 will be discussed by the architect regarding HVAC on the roof. 10 and 11 were addressed. 12, Charlie, we did provide, Dante's father Sal provided that the right-of-way previously shown on a tax map has been vacated, and there's documentation for that. If that has not been submitted to the board, we will submit that to
Yeah,
the board.
that's a private right-of-way that crossed over Mr. Hegarty's property to
Correct.
your, okay. So to kind of speed this up, Mr. Chairman, the big things that I just have for Mr. Seawald is, with regards to the stormwater management, obviously you're proposing a, pretty extensive detention system with concrete pipe underneath, your parking area. There wasn't really any details on the, the header system, on how that was going to be constructed. Can you provide some testimony as to that? Are they going to be like box culverts, concrete tees? Like, what exactly is that? How's that going to be constructed? You're proposing your stormwater management system, pretty much right up to the farmland buffer. I think we want to get a little bit more information on how that's to be constructed to make sure, you're not going to be building it into the farmland buffer there.
I don't believe we have it in the farmland buffer.
You're like right up to it.
Yeah, so it'll be concrete. Right now, we currently show concrete header boxes. You don't have specific cut sheets yet. We'll order them, provide them to your office should the site be actually approved and proceed into construction. But we do have 36-inch RCP piping, which is reinforced concrete piping, with concrete header boxes connecting both basins around the building. You're correct, it is up to the curb line, which is next to the farmland buffer, but it will not go into the farmland buffer.
Is there going to be any disturbance in that farmland buffer?
So technically, Mr. Chairman, the system is getting installed on a stone base. You know, if you consider the stone base part of that stormwater management structure, you know, they have a 1-foot ledge on the bottom of that carries over into the farmland buffer, you know. Whether
Well,
that's,
I'm more or less.
they're
the
literally
grading-
right at the farmland buffer
but
with the
the grading
stormwater
is-
management system and with the building.
And the building, so how are you planning on constructing that building without disturbing that buffer? Like, we don't even allow grading in the buffer. So how do you plan on constructing that building that's on that buffer line?
I'm happy to answer. There's
Yeah.
existing disturbance in the buffer today.
That's not how this rolls. So a farmland buffer requires no disturbance,
And
period.
so,
So if you're gonna disturb it, you're gonna need a variance from them for disturbance in the farmland buffer, whether there's prior disturbance or not. If your project is encroaching in any way for construction, grading, whatever, in that buffer, that requires a variance, which historically with this board has been a humongous lift for
Sure.
applicants.
and I'll happily describe why we're showing the disturbance. Out there today is a gravel parking lot into the farmland buffer. I understand that we don't want any disturbance, but it is not a natural buffer right now. If you go out to the site, there is gravel into that 50-foot buffer from the property line. So what we show in our proposed site plan rendering is removal of that gravel, regrading, sod, and then landscaping of additional trees next to the existing drip line of trees that are out there today, and then further landscaping plants next to the parking area. So I do agree that this may require some relief for the fact that the building, the parking lot, and the stormwater basin is very close, if not on top of the line that we're drawing the line in the sand. But out there today is, in my opinion, worse. It's a gravel lot. If the board really wanted to draw the line in the sand, we could leave the gravel lot there. I could then not provide the landscaping in that area, so there's no disturbance. But I think there's an overall benefit when redeveloping this property to enhance that buffer with more trees, more landscaping, than leaving it as is. I respect the ordinance. I understand where we're coming from.
But you're also here for a use variance?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
if that was your plan, that would be difficult for
You
you.
would need, not only that, once, okay, say the board does look favorable and say, yeah, you can remove that, regrade it, there's to be no further disturbance in that area after you're completed, and that includes taking care of it. It's supposed to be a natural buffer, period.
Yeah, we do not have proposed improvements in regards to building, pavement. The stormwater basin is underneath the parking lot. We don't have to.
No, you're not hearing what I'm saying.
Right.
That 50-foot buffer,
Yep,
you go in there and clean it up.
yep.
You resod it, you put grass, you plant seed,
Trees,
whatever.
Yeah,
It's supposed to be let go natural
sure.
at that point in time. No mowing, no
Yeah,
nothing.
unless the professionals have a major issue with that, I don't think my client would have any problem not maintaining whatever plant species, trees, shrubs, natural grasses that you would want in that buffer. That's not the intention of it. The intention of it is to provide a development, remove the encroachment that's there, and then put back, if you just wanted grass and eliminate those trees due to maintenance reasons, to leave it as a natural buffer, so that natural grass grows, we're happy to talk about that as well.
Right.
I don't want you to think I'm drawing a hard
Sherry?
line in the sand here.
We don't want to eliminate any trees.
No, we don't want to eliminate any.
Yeah, I mean, well, we certainly wouldn't recommend sod, only because if you can't mow it. But yeah, if you want to propose like a natural no-mow seed mix that you could let go,
Yeah, we could
let
certainly
it
do that.
revert.
Okay. Now, as far as trees, we really don't need to tree that, correct?
Well, they're showing new tree plantings in that buffer.
What's there now, Sherry?
So it's a row of, was a lot of sweet gums that are right there along the border.
Sweet gum?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have area that they could plant. So I did have them switch out some of the species to make it more natural,
Right.
to have more native species there. So
Just something that
do
they
have
could just
that
let
going
go.
back in. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I want the board
But
to
you're still going to need relief
understand, we
for
have
the
to have relief.
disturbance.
Yes, we have to.
Because you're gonna have footings for the building that you're gonna have to dig. I don't know what the over excavation's gonna be. You're gonna have footings for the building, and if your building's right on that line, that means you're gonna encroach into that at that time, but you're gonna put it back,
Correct.
okay? You have a problem with that, Jen?
It's up to you guys. I mean,
I know, but
at the end of the day, you know, you guys have been pretty firm about
I know.
the no disturbance in a farmland buffer. And, you know, they're here for a use variance to propose this application that's right up against that buffer line. And I understand that there's things in that area currently, but, and if they were here as a permitted use before the planning board, we may be having a very different conversation, but they're not. And so, you know, I just am concerned that the building and the parking lot, as proposed, are literally on that 50-foot line, which in my opinion is absolutely unattainable unless you encroach into that buffer to disturb it. So if that's the case, and then they restore it naturally, and you're okay with it post-construction, that there's no encroachment, that's okay, but they do need relief for that.
yeah, okay.
So, I mean, that's up to you, but, you know, I have never seen a building proposed right up against the line that did not have to encroach into the buffer for construction purposes. I mean, so that's, there will be disturbance in that area if they restore it naturally and then it's maintained. I'm just concerned, like, there's no, I mean, the architect has yet to come up, but there's no doors on that side, there's no means of egress at there, there's gonna be nothing perimeterally around the building, and fire's okay with, you know, it just concerns me that we're on the line. Usually, we have a couple feet to work with.
Well, they can reduce the footprint of the building.
Yep, they
Or
could.
move the building,
Yep, they could. I mean, moving the building is gonna be difficult in its current size, considering the parking lot, you know, is already a 24-foot wide aisle with spaces that are conforming. So to shift the building would then require to shift the parking lot, which is
They
already
need a-
10 and a half.
They need a variance for the.
I get it, but it's only
setback
10
anyway.
feet off that lot line as it is. So, you know, moving it to the north is gonna shift that parking lot closer to that commercial property, but, you know, I mean, it's up to you, but any disturbance in that area is gonna require relief from you guys. So, it's up to you
Right.
whether or not you're willing to allow it for construction purposes, but I'm just concerned operationally. And you know, I don't see the applicant here to talk about like actual operations, but if anything were to occur on that side, then you're in that buffer, which is on the line. So, I mean, it's something that we probably should understand a little bit better.
Okay,
I want the board to understand something as well. We're talking about the current disturbed state in this area. Now, we came out, this is a code case that's almost a couple years old as well. There was significant site work done without any permits, without any input from the township on our first day out there in this buffer. So you talk about a gravel area, I'm under the impression that that was your client that put it there. So the restoration should be a very important part of what you're talking about, and it should really be focused on, because I don't think this is a condition that pre-existed the client, this application, this applicant.
okay. Yeah.
So, Mr.
Looking at a
Chairman,
few things, different aerials as well as Lot 14 civil drawing plans. Again, not that I appreciate Jen's comments. If the board were to really hold the line of that 50-foot buffer, I could propose to shift the entire layout, building, parking lot, 5 feet to the north. It would reduce that 10.5-foot setback of the parking area to the northern property line by 5 feet. Now, my neighbor to the north, lot 14, their retaining wall for their parking lot is within 3 feet of the property line. So I don't think there's any kind of natural buffer that we'd be saving between our commercial development and their commercial development. So if the board professionals as well as the board really want to hold the line on that farmland buffer, I could shift it so that there's theoretically 55 feet. Keep the 50 feet alone, then the parking, the stormwater management, and the building will be
Not gonna
all
do
5
that.
feet off
Not
that
with the
line.
parking
5
lot.
feet is plenty for typical shallow spread footings.
I wouldn't worry, 'cause this
You have
house
that
is
foot
way up
off of
here.
the stormwater basin, you'll leave 4
This-
feet left.
this 1,000 foot
So that is a major concern of the board and the professionals. I think that's an easy solution. It's the same variance. The variance does get intensified to go from 10.5 to 5.5, but that's something we would absolutely happy to be discussing.
I think that would
I would
probably.
prefer that
I
personally.
would too.
So,
They need a variance for the parking lot anyway.
And you're up against the
Commercial.
retaining wall and the power washing company.
Exactly.
Which is really no impact whatsoever, and I
Exactly.
think that the potential impact to the buffer is more significant than a 5-foot setback off of a retaining wall.
Yeah, I agree.
We're happy to do that.
But you got to understand, you're still going to have relief from the board to clean up. I understand what Mr.
I
Howard's
think it's the
saying,
same variance for leave.
but it's still going to have to be cleaned up and put back to natural state.
So at the time of the violation, the professionals that you're here testifying before, was not part of this project. We were hired because of this violation and brought to you to discuss this project this evening.
I understand,
So
but
the
it's,
same variance, if there is a variance for restoring not approved disturbance, we'd be happy to remove it as part of this application. I do need to disturb it, again, the farmland buffer, to remove it, and then leave whatever plant or species that Cherry is okay with to do so. We would be happy to provide that. And then leave it alone, you'll have that 5-foot buffer so that you could walk around the building, maintain it, whatever you need to do.
okay, Jen, could we do that under a condition of approval? Or that has to be cleaned up regardless?
No, I mean, I think that the buffer has to be cleaned up regardless, but I mean, I would absolutely ask Ron to put that as one of the conditions in the resolution. But I think that 5-foot now, like, area between the building and the parking lot and that buffer line is gonna give enough room so that it would make me less concerned that there's gonna be disturbance in that buffer in the future.
Okay.
And like I said, you're up against a retaining wall and a power washing company.
No,
Yeah.
but my question is, do they need a relief variance to clean that up? Or
I don't think
Can we do
so.
that under a condition?
I think it should just be a condition of the approval because, I mean, I get that it's a code issue, and there was disturbance there, but, you know, if it was a different use, there may not be the same requirements that there are based upon this use. And if, I would just, I mean, Mr. Trappel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I just think a condition that be restored to its natural state in accordance with the recommendations of Sherry, I think that's enough. I don't necessarily think they would need relief for that.
Okay.
We're in favor of that condition.
so, Mr. Chairman, one concern I just have with that is, with shifting the parking lot, we're also going to be shifting the stormwater management system that's underneath the parking lot. The northern part of the detention system is already very close to the property line there, so I'd ask Josh to just take a look and, let the board know, can you shift some of that pipe work to other parts of the site and still get the same storage without causing any issues going over the property line there?
It's a good comment, that header box in the manhole is
Yeah.
within 4, maybe 5 feet of the property line. When this whole thing shifts over, if I need to add another barrel, shrink that up for your review again,
Yeah,
that
so-
might happen, but I have a feeling if I lose a foot or two in this system, it's probably designed already to accommodate that. So I'll submit a revised stormwater report
Okay.
for you. It'll get resubmitted to SCD, but I don't believe
You'll reconfigure it to maintain whatever the existing setback that's shown in this current configuration, approximately 5 feet?
You're talking about to the southern farmland, or you're talking about?
No, to the north there.
To lot 14.
Yeah.
I will hold that line.
Okay, all right. So, and then just the last couple of things that I just had with the stormwater management. Obviously, it's a detention system. During construction, it's gonna have silt fences on it, silt screens and things on that. I just asked that as part of the condition of any approval, that the applicant be required to televise the line and clean it prior to it being, opened up to full service. Just so that way there's no issues with the system not clogging up or anything like that. And then, also on top of that, applicant has agreed to provide a stormwater operation and maintenance manual. I would just ask that that also be required to be recorded by deed. The applicant as responsible owner for that. It's a lot easier for the town to regulate stormwater management systems when they're above ground and you can drive by and see if debris is piling up. It's a lot more difficult when it's underground, out of sight, out of mind. So we just want to make sure that, they're saying they're meeting the reductions and treating the stormwater, that only happens if the facility is properly maintained. So we just want to make sure of that.
Okay,
Both of those we'd be happy to provide as conditions of approval.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
quick question. Does the shift north compromise the integrity or the expectations of the property owner currently to the north, does that change or inhibit any of his existing structure?
No, the only thing that would change is that the corner of our row of parking, which is 10 spaces, would get 5 feet closer. But if you take a look at his approved plans, he has a retaining wall on the entire 338-foot southern property line.
And it wouldn't compromise that in any way? No. Okay.
And Mr. Merchants, I would just note that that property owner has been noticed as part of this application. So they had the opportunity to come and participate in this process as a member of the public.
Not, with this, not knowing that that we just shifted it.
Regardless, like, they got notice that an application next to them was being heard tonight, and if there was concerns regarding what the impacts were gonna be, how, like, it's a notice in the mail, they don't get a set of plans, but they have the opportunity to go down to town hall and review the plans. If they don't avail themselves of that opportunity, that's on them, but they are absolutely, you know, by law, every property owner within 200 feet is noticed to say, something's happening within 200 feet of your property. If you're interested, this is the night to come and listen to it, and you can go to the planning office and look at the plans and see what the issues are. So if they were concerned, they probably would be here.
Mr. Alfieri, at this time, let the board take a 10-minute break here.
That's fine, we can discuss the two items with my client.
Okay,
Zoning board will now reconvene.
Mr. Alfieri, I just want to address real quick, I want to move forward with the testimony, but I do want to hear from the operator
So,
himself.
we have no objection to that.
Okay.
Obviously, the applicant is not here tonight, so we
Right.
will be requesting the meeting to carry, but we would like to get as much testimony as we can tonight.
I agree.
And during the recess, we did discuss a few of the items.
But I want to address, as far as Ms. Cafone, I don't want to hear from her tonight.
My heart is hurt,
No,
I was calling her next, so,
well, the reason being, once we hear from the operator or the applicant, her testimony will have to back up what the applicant testifies to.
appreciate
So I think it'd be a waste of time
she was
to,
batting cleanup anyway.
okay,
But
So-
one of the points that was brought up was regards to the curbing on the drive aisle towards lot 14.
correct.
While we were discussing it, 2 points came up. One, it would require DOT approval, and then the second being, it would be encroaching on the adjacent property owner's frontage. So we're okay with it, but it would be conditioned upon
Those
DOT
two
approval
approvals.
and then the property owner allowing that encroachment.
What I would say, Mr. Chairman, it is pretty typical for DOT when you're proposing a driveway and a right-of-way to require both sides of the driveway radiuses to be curbed and across the frontage. So I would think at the very least, on the east side, you're going to have to, you know, put a radius in with curb to the edge of pavement there, so.
Well-
Our comment is that technically that radius will go into lot 14's frontage.
Right, which is why we typically don't allow a driveway on the property line, right? I mean, so you're asking for relief to put the driveway on the property line, and now you're telling us because you're putting the driveway on the property line, you can't give us a curb radius for the driveway opening. So
So just, we can, Jen, provide what's called a flare instead of a radius. We could provide just a angled up curb in front, but it still requires the same relief. We have wetlands to the west, we have our property to the east. Regardless of development, you would have the same issue here. So what we're just saying is we're happy to provide it, assuming DOT says yes and lot 14 says yes. Otherwise, it may have to be a concrete flare and not a radius.
It's up to you.
Mr. Chairman, I would say, you know, let's see what DOT says, you know, when they do their review of it. Like I said, it's pretty atypical for them to not require radiuses on the driveway like that with curbs. So, you know, we can see what it is. If they say they don't want the curb and the applicant's going to provide a flare with the apron, I would say that's acceptable. But let's wait and see what we get back from DOT as a condition of the approval.
Right, now, if DOT comes back and they want the radius and curb there, then the applicant is going to have to go to the owner at lot 14 and get relief.
Well, isn't that radius, wouldn't that be in the right of way? It's not really on the neighbor's property, correct?
It's in the
That is
third.
correct, but you would then be theoretically limiting their frontage for a driveway connection, and there's separation requirements between driveways on DOT standards. So it does have a little bit of a ripple effect. It's all within DOT jurisdiction, absolutely, but I don't want it to sound like we're just saying no for no. We're saying yes, but there is a couple conditions that have to follow it. We can't just put it in blanketly, that's all.
I would recommend that perhaps, I understand you're gonna carry the application to a later date. There's a site plan approval for that lot that came before the planning board months ago.
We have those plans,
Okay,
correct?
so where's the driveway? Is it right there?
I'm not saying that we're
Just
impacting.
asking, whoa, you said you don't wanna encroach into someone else's driveway in a separation. Do you know where the driveway is?
I have the plans right here, yes, I
So
do.
how far away is the driveway?
Jen, I get where you're getting at. My comment to you, it's DOT regulation. There's a waiver that I have to get for even having this driveway next to the property, not municipal waiver, a DOT waiver. And then there's another waiver of separation of driveways.
Well, your driveway setback, I think, is a variance from this board.
Correct.
So I'm just suggesting that when you're asking for relief from this board, and they're asking for something as simple as that, and then there's, like, you're saying that there needs to be separation, so like, and you have the information, so provide them with the information. If there's not adequate separation, then tell them that. If there is, then we should be talking about something else.
Let me try to, let's say this site plan never goes through. If the site plan never gets built as it's currently built, DOT is still going to see an encroachment of this radius over another neighbor's property line. All I'm asking for is if this gets approved and that we said yes to providing the radius on lot 14, that we allow the condition that if we do not get DOT and lot 14's permission, that we can fall back to a concrete flare. That's all we're asking for. Because we don't have control over what lot 14 will say, nor do we have control over what DOT will say. So I get it, we're requesting a waiver or variance from this board, but we're being asked to provide this concrete radius that I can't say exactly yes to yet.
So then perhaps maybe we should be seeking preliminary and not preliminary and final until you can figure it out.
I think we condition most approvals on a lot of outside agencies.
I agree, but, you know, sometimes when there's all these things that are required to be investigated prior to figuring it out, the board may want to see it, and it's not atypical for Howell boards to grant preliminary only and let you work all this crap out and then come back for final when all is done, so they can understand exactly what it is that they're approving.
And
Well, the Wawa, for instance, the Wawa at Howell Road,
Yep.
we did a preliminary, they came in for preliminary and final. We wouldn't do the final. We did a preliminary until we received back the information from DOT, how the drive aisle. Well, guess what? The DOT would not let them put the drive aisles the way they had it designed. And if you were on the board at that time, if we would have granted all of those approvals, they would have had a site plan approved and finalized to where now the applicant would have had to come back to the board because it all changed.
I don't think we would have to come back to this board. I respect your comment, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Beam. We would not have to come back to this board. That driveway is in DOT right away. So if they ask us to change the curb, the concrete flare to a radius, I don't believe we would have to come back.
Yeah, but our ordinance,
I
I'm
mean,
gonna give you-
you're seeking relief from this board for that driveway.
But not-
If they say that they want the curb and the radius as part of this application, then that's what they say. You have to go to the DOT. If you can't, then you're gonna have to come back and figure it out with them. But at the end of the day, you're pushing forward, you're pushing back and saying, there needs to be driveway separation, there needs to be this. My recommendation would be, yes, I will give you the curb along the driveway apron unless the DOT says no. But you're coming back like, there's all wetlands along that property line. So the likelihood that there's a driveway up against your driveway is probably 0, which we know. So I would strongly urge you, coming for this board for a D1 use variance, to listen to what they're saying. They want the curb radius on the driveway apron. I understand that it's a DOT's jurisdiction. I've been sitting on this board for a long time. Never have I heard the DOT come back and say no. So what I would suggest is, instead of arguing about it, you think about moving forward and saying, sure, unless the DOT says no, because there is a site plan approval on this property, and the driveway is nowhere near your driveway. So I don't think the driveway separation issue is going to be an issue, especially since there's wetlands on that property line, and the DOT has never said no. Otherwise, they could say no to your driveway. Like, you need relief for the driveway. So, I mean, I understand your position. What I'm saying is that they're not okay with it, and I would take that and move forward. That's my suggestion.
We were, again, just to clarify, we were trying to address a comment that came from Charlie, asking for if you could provide this concrete radius. The answer was yes. Then when we regrouped and came back, we simply wanted to say, we can't just say yes blanketly. We have to get Lot 14 approval. That's all I want to say. And it is very typical for an approval to be conditioned by DOT. The variance for the driveway being on the property line has nothing to do with the radius or the concrete.
It does. You have to have relief for not providing it.
If
In
you
our
met-
ordinances, it requires a radius. Our ordinance requires it.
Please clarify, Charlie, the variance approval, whether it's for the radius or for the location of the driveway against the property line.
If the driveway's in the right location, you'd be able to provide the radius without getting approval from Lot 14.
Exactly.
Yes.
Let's just go back to that. Okay, so essentially, what we're going to do is what Jen was suggesting. We are fine with the curbing, but obviously, what we were requesting, and I guess it spiraled out a little bit,
Right.
was that it is conditioned upon DOT approval and then subsequent the adjacent property owners. We just wanted you to be aware of that.
I understand that. Now, my next question to you would be, well, let him, I know traffic's is probably going
Yeah, we have.
to answer this, but this is a utility company or contractor. Tractor trailers coming in and out of there. If they're going to turn and go eastbound on 33,
There are no tractor trailers being proposed, and we will get into that.
I believe I testified earlier that there are no articulating vehicles coming to this development, and it's not
okay,
designed to
I
accommodate.
understand that, but we've got to look at, we're giving you a variance. We've got to look at a warehouse variance. Most warehouses have tractor trailers coming in and out to them. Okay, you have to provide, you got a 24-foot driveway. If a tractor trailer, a 53-foot box van comes in, and it's going to have to go out and turn to the east, he's not going to make a square head turn. You're going to put him in the westbound side of 33 to make that turn. That's what I'm saying. All of that's going to have to be addressed.
Understood.
We'll touch on traffic when we get to the traffic
Okay.
engineer, but let's get back to Mr. Seawald's, the balance of his testimony so that we
Okay.
can get through as much, and we understand we are coming back to the board, so we would love
Okay.
for any of your comments and suggestions so we can regroup after the fact.
Okay.
So I believe we left off on sheet 11?
On sheet 10.
You know what, why don't we do this? Is there-
I can make everybody's life easier. All the rest of the comments, I believe we've touched on or we've addressed, and I have no further testimony to either discuss about Charlie. All the rest of Charlie's comments will either be addressed by another witness, or we've agreed to it and will provide it if we have not already provided it.
Okay. Charlie, you have any objection?
No, I'd say that's accurate.
Jen's?
Okay.
Jen, why don't you-
Jen, is there any comments?
went through everything that the engineer.
Thank you.
Any questions of the board? Seeing none, want to move forward?
Nothing further from Mr.
Okay,
Seawald.
you want to call your next witness?
Sure.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Sherry.
I just wanted to ask him a few questions
Okay,
that weren't
I'm
addressed.
sorry, Sherry.
Is there-
I thought you were done.
No,
Josh,
I
come
didn't
back up.
start.
Okay. No, I thought, okay.
Couple of things. You do need to ask for that waiver to pay into the tree fund, so you just have to request to be able to pay into it.
We'll condition that as a condition of approval.
Okay.
That we would pay into the tree fund.
Right. Also, I had emailed after, I guess, last month when you guys didn't, go with Doug Hanley from your office.
Yes.
We talked about, I know there was a violation on the site, which we had spoke with Mr. Howard about, for additional trees, and it didn't look like those trees were counted in the replacement plan. So just want to make sure that you're going to be updating the plan to count for them.
Yes, we will.
Okay, and then, right, so then obviously you have to change the calculation for what you owe. And,
Sherry, just on that note, do we have specifics on what is being contributed for that portion?
I don't know if I have an exact number.
Was it in that email?
we,
And again, just to talk about, it's the trees that were previously removed based on historical aerials. Sorry, Madam Chair, we're talking about the trees that were removed based on
The violation, at the time of violation that weren't counted, right?
Yeah, so we would provide either historical aerial or any site photos, something like that along the lines. We would then add that to our tree management plan, which is sheet 3, and whatever the new contribution number will be, we would provide.
Well, Sherry and I had looked at it. I mean, we had come to, we thought a reasonable conclusion that there would be about 30 replacement trees
which
based
would be
on
six, which is, looks like 6 trees were removed of
large
decent
trees
size.
at a 5-to-1 ratio we came up with for 30. So is that something that you would agree to now?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Okay.
just wanted it on the record.
Right, yeah, you didn't mention you need a waiver on the foundation landscaping between the building and the parking. So they did provide some along the, like, west side of the building, you know, but they don't really have any along that north side. So it is, you know, you have to ask for that.
Yeah, well, we're seeking that relief for multiple reasons. One, we're set back from Route 33, so it's a warehouse that's over 150 feet off the property line, and we do have parking in between our building and that. It's just not, I would say, suitable for this kind of development and operation. We do have a nice architectural facade elevations that break up the building. You'll see them shortly. And we did try to supplant other areas of the property with those foundation plans. We just did not put them up against the building. The western facade is the bays. That's where the trucks will be coming in. The northern facade, which is where the parking lot is, and then the 2 other facades run up to the residential property buffer and the farmland buffer. So if there's additional shrubs, Sherry, we'd be happy to place them elsewhere on the property, but that's really the main reason why we did not install those.
Right. All right, and then the other thing I had mentioned in my letter was one of the trees that you had to be saved. Just want to make sure you saw that. It needs to be removed. It's hazardous, so we don't want to save that tree. And then I had also noted there was, in my comment number 2, about there are some trees in poor condition as you enter the site by the wetland side. So certainly with adding more trees to the site, you can plant in the wetlands, you know, as long as they don't disturb the whole area while they do that. But so certainly over there's a bunch of invasive species that really shouldn't be there, so adding new trees in that area would be fine.
Again, happy to say yes with the condition that the DEP says okay.
Yeah, they allow it, but yes. Okay, that's all.
That it? Okay. Any further questions?
You know, sir, I just want a 30-foot where we can get 30 foot.
Okay. Yeah, but they're still not gonna be able to get the 30 foot on the other drive lines. That's the thing. They're not gonna get 30 foot there. You'll get it there, but you're not gonna get it there. We'll see. Let's see what the fire code.
All right,
Okay,
All right,
move forward.
so I'm going to have Mr. Monroe come up and provide some
Okay.
architectural testimony.
Okay. Do we have any architectural drawings?
We do.
Anybody, no new one.
Matt, do we have any architectural?
Architecturals were submitted with the application.
It was back to the distribution sheet, Matt.
Want to qualify your witness?
And Mr. Monroe, could you please provide your qualifications for the board?
Yes, I was accepted before this board earlier this year, but I have been licensed in New Jersey for over 20 years, Carnegie Mellon University graduate, and past president of Jersey Shore AIA Architects Association, and current chairman of the Red Bank Construction Board of Appeals. And I've been before probably the same number, probably 60 to 80 different municipalities. So,
We accept your credentials.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Monroe, can you please describe the proposed development to the building, or to the board?
Yeah, when we first laid out this building, you probably can go to the second page, the floor plan sheet. And also you have the visions of the site plan in your head. When we first designed this building, we added some articulations in the building so you can pull in under cover slightly. And you see those 3 different bays of varying depth, and that was done purposefully. So I could actually bring trucks all the way in, and as they get filled up in the morning with the equipment that they need for that day, they could pull forward, they could stack up 2 if you needed to, and they could all go out together. So that also was done purposefully to not create any issues with the site, so that these trucks would never, and they're relatively small trucks. They're box trucks, small utility type trucks, a box van, a pickup truck with mounted equipment on it. We'll go through some of those in a second. But it was that indent was done very purposefully so that it would not cause a bunch of trucks or a bunch of vehicles, even though being smaller, to create a blockage. So you come into the site, the closest point in the site you have access, you can pull into the building, you can pull under the building, so you're out of the weather. And the building has, we've added the undulations in the plan and also the elevations as per your ordinance. The building will be a concrete construction type, so it's most likely tilt-up construction. You come in, you pour a slab, and then you pour the walls on the slab, and you've had it before. It goes up very efficiently with minimal disturbance of the perimeter. It's very durable, doesn't require maintenance. And another issue came up about, we have no doors or access points towards the right-hand side or the rear, which is the top or the left-hand side of your screen, so there's no reason to go out in those areas for emergency egress. Also for trash, in that largest indent towards the top, I can install an overhead door so a trash vehicle can pull up undercover, open a door right to a trash room without getting access to the building, and that can always be made conditions trash storage. There's no reason it would need to be, because this is not a food use, but I could have a sealed trash room, which is basically accessed just from the outside with a man door from the inside, and I think that would be. Yes. So I think it can easily be accommodated there, and I can bring that in a revised drawing for the next meeting to show you if necessary. Issues came up about the roof type of material and probably HVAC equipment. It's a white TPO roofing. It has a parapet around the whole building. And when we add those articulations, the building is taller. Most of the buildings are like 20, 22 feet tall. Some of those articulations go up to 27, I think 28. But that's only at the front entry. Wherever those articulations are higher, that's where we'll put the mechanical equipment so it won't be visible from the street. So we'll stipulate that it won't be visible from people on the ground or on the approach coming in. We can do that sensitively.
Are those dry bays, are they going to have awnings out over them?
No, there's a roof structure. If you look at the elevation page on the next page, there's a 14-foot high door and a 12-foot wide, and that roof is up another 4 feet above that. So it's a covered canopy. It's an indent in the building. Right. But I think it's a nice feature. I think it'll look good.
No, but there's going to be a canopy out over?
It's a solid roof structure. It's actual roof. I could have brought those doors right flush, but I think that would be not as an attractive look. I think this will be more attractive being recessed. I think it's more utilitarian. It's nicer to have the vehicle a little bit out of the weather, I think, when it's pulling up to the door. So it was done for a couple of different reasons.
So it's going to be an open canopy.
It's an open canopy.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
It's going to be,
okay. The main tower element to the left on your screen, the front elevation towards the left-hand side, that's going to be for the few visitors. It's not public visitors. It might be a product rep or something like that. It's not generally a public facility. so people coming and going would go into that door. We wanted to make that indication where the entrance would be. Some of the things the owner is going to testify to that I'm aware of, I can give you some background information just very briefly. We 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Just how the building works, these materials will come in over a course of a day or two, and they'll be queued up, so a certain truck will take a certain type of equipment, and the building will have, standard wires and pipes and things of that nature. But there might be a specific piece of equipment that was made for a job. It'll be loaded, it'll go out that day, and come back. We're going to talk about vehicles, but there's roughly up to 10 vehicles outside, and those would all fit inside of a standard parking space, and 6 vehicles inside, which would be trucks that we didn't want to leave outside, but they're smaller trucks, a small dump, a small excavator, a small bobcat or something like that. Those types of things would be kept inside. There's nothing that's going to require a trailer transport.
How are those trucks going to get inside if those bays are occupied for loading other trucks? I
Well,
don't see any other entrance inside the warehouse.
The trucks would go in there, and they could be pulled further back, and I don't need all the bays for loading, so they could keep the trucks in 1 or 2 of the bays, and they could stage out of one of the bays if they wanted to. Some of the staging could happen with the vehicles pulled outside and could be loaded from the outside, especially if there's not a lot of specialized equipment, so.
And where are they going to be, where are they going to be parked when they're not in use?
Anything larger than it would fit in a parking space would be indoors.
How are they going to get in there?
They'll fit through, there's nothing bigger that wouldn't fit through that door.
Yeah, but I'm just, can we go back to the other drawing?
Sure.
Now, does that go all the way in? The way that looks to me is the trucks back up to that loading dock, and how did they get further back in?
It's not a loading dock, it can actually go into the building.
Those are garage doors.
It's just,
It's a garage door.
it's a garage door.
Yeah.
Okay, no, just to me, that's what it appeared to me. That's okay. I
That's
just
why
wanted to clarify that.
it's not really a big building, overall for these types of uses, so it's, once you have the vehicles there and some materials, it's not
It's like a fire station,
So it's a roller curtain door.
it's like a firehouse, yes, somewhat.
firehouse. That's what it's like. They can back the trucks up in there.
All the way back, all the way to that back wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to be very few columns. There'll be probably just 4 columns on the whole building tops on the inside, and there'll be clear passage for trucks to pull all the way back if they want them to. Things get used at different times, so if it's not going to be used, it can be pulled further back, and it won't be in the way of queuing up trucks being loaded. And the owner can talk to that this layout works really well for that type of use. I think there's a lot of flexibility in that layout. Is it strict?
Do they have ample room outside? Because you said a mini excavator, that you're going to require a trailer. Do they have ample room to pull in, circulate, and back in?
Yeah, it'd be a fixed trailer. It's not an articulated trailer, so it's a relatively small piece of
roll-off?
equipment. Yeah, it's a small utility type. It's not major road construction or major large equipment. It's smaller equipment.
Okay.
Mr. Monroe, is the applicant planning on parking any of that on the paved surface? Any of those small excavators or anything like that, or is it all going to be trailered?
No, a small excavator or tread type of thing would be inside these.
Okay,
the
so like
outside-
no construction equipment other than contractors' trucks and things like that on the outside,
Yeah, there's a
right?
bunch of specialty trucks that have like a Comcast utility truck. It might have a small cherry picker. It might have a small piece of equipment, or a news truck, right? Picture a news truck, has a dish on it. There's a bunch of specialized things like that.
So Dante, would the applicant agree to a condition that no construction heavy equipment stored outside the building? One of the concerns obviously is, on an asphalt surface, diesel, hydraulic lines dripping in, then it eats up all the asphalt, so.
Charlie, why don't we wait till the
Okay.
applicant's here?
We're going to have the
Correct, no,
Alright.
no track vehicles, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wait till the applicant's here, and then we could ask him that. then.
So I'm going to have Mr. Monroe, is there anything that we didn't touch on, either Mr. Bean, or Ms. Beans, or
Jen?
Charlie's?
The applicant and the architect have addressed all my architectural concerns with their submissions. There were comments in my letter originally that in this review have been totally addressed. I think the architecture 100% meets the ordinance, which for use of this type is very atypical. So I think that's very commendable, and I think the architecture is great, and it's been a long time since I've seen an applicant be able to comply with that at a hearing and not have to deal with that after the fact.
I agree.
I think you're probably the first one I've seen in over a year that has dealt with it here, as opposed to a resolution compliance item. So that's extremely commendable, because that's always something that we deal with after the fact.
If I remember, I think he did that the other time. so
I do too. I do too.
It was fine. Good.
Are you going to talk about signage? Or is someone else going to talk about
We
signage?
just have one building sign and one freestanding sign, I believe, but we don't, it was just one building sign, so I can, it's a fixed internally illuminated typical sign. We tend to meet all the sign ordinance.
Well, you need some relief for the signage. And I would just ask that you submit a detail of the building sign, and I'm not sure if that's you or someone else, because we have a detail of the freestanding sign, we just don't have a detail of the building sign.
I can submit a detail.
I know, but that's not really a detail. And then I guess the general question from my perspective is I'm gleaning from this application that this is going to be a single tenant building, right? Just for your applicant.
Yes.
So, and you're so far off the road, why exactly do you need a building sign? Because who's going to see it?
It's not as important as it would normally be. I mean, I could make it smaller. I mean,
I'm not suggesting, I'm just asking, because typically we like to understand why you need signage. You know, when we looked at it, the applicant's proposing 2 main business signs where one is permitted because you're not on a corner. So the question becomes, and I'm not suggesting you need to address it tonight because I know you're coming back. It's just something that maybe you should think about. I have no objection to the signage, honestly, because for the street, for the road sign or the freestanding sign that you're proposing, the location for a traffic safety standpoint has to be visible and big enough, because as you know, people driving up and down 33 drive at quite a speed, and you need to be able to see the site, but you're not really expecting public, correct? But I take no exception to the signage. I just would like, when you come back, and probably this falls on, I'm just going to dump everything on Christine, in your lap, that just understanding why it is that it's necessary, but I don't take exception. If you could just provide me with that detail before the next meeting, that would be very helpful.
sure, no problem. Thanks.
But other than that, I have no questions for the architect. You? Oh, the other thing is if you could just check sheet A 3.1, it seems the elevations seem to be mislabeled. So if you just take a look at that.
The only other minor thing is I'm going to talk to the fire marshal. See, this building would not require sprinkling. It's not a big building under the building code. It's totally non-combustible. If they have some strong reason for a firefighting point of view, we have no problem doing it. The issue when you don't have a public water service is you have to create a swimming pool underground for a 45-minute supply of water from your most remote area head system, and it's quite a large structure, so it's going to magically show up somewhere. Sometimes it can go under the building, but it's big. It's a lot of water, and it's probably over $100,000.
But Charlie, you said that we're going to get service, right?
Yeah, the applicant agreed, obviously, to connect into the water service and the sanitary that's getting installed down Route 33 right now. It was a comment in the Fire Bureau's review that they, you know, for an application and a building of this size, that they want to see sprinkler systems, so.
I'll talk to them. If obviously, if it's requested, we'll do it, but I want to make sure they're aware of our construction type and what we're proposing, and if I can allay any fears, any firefighting fears, see if I can't get them to come around on that.
A lot of it depends on what you're storing inside, too.
Yeah, the building's going to have a classification, and there's no hazardous materials, and the way the code defines them is things like oil and gasoline are very small quantities in small containers. I just did a chemical plant up in DuPont, and we dealt with a lot of different types of hazardous storage. And the code has a very, very tight handle on what can be stored where, at what point it becomes a high hazard storage facility, as opposed to an incidental few cans of something in a locker. So this is not going to be a high hazard storage facility.
No, I understand, but it's also a warehouse, and we kind of have to follow
Right, so.
The ordinance is correct. Charlie?
Yeah, so obviously it was something that was brought up in the fire official's review. I would also say that this is something that would typically fall under the purview of the construction office when filing for building permits. So, I think we can hang our hat on that as a board, that the applicant's required to obtain all necessary municipal building permits. And if the fire official and the construction official determines that they need it, then they should have to provide it.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions from the board for Mr. Monroe?
Any further questions? I don't see none. Professionals? Any further? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And now, our last person tonight, unless you really want, you don't want to see Christine?
No, because the applicant,
No, no.
her testimony will probably change.
Bad joke, my fault.
That's okay. We're kind of serious up here if you gather that.
I'm trying to lighten the mood. So Andy, you previously sworn in. Can you please provide your qualifications for the board?
Good evening. My name is Andy Japola. I am a registered professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'm a professional traffic operations engineer. That's a national certification put out by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Both that certification and license are current. I'm a principal at Dynamic Traffic. I have been a practicing traffic engineer and land development for my career now. I've appeared in front of many zoning boards throughout the state. And
We accept your credentials.
thank you. Our office prepared a traffic impact study for this project. It was dated November 30th, 2018. We prepared this study for this site, which is proposed as a generic 12,000 square foot office and 2,000 square foot, 12,000 square foot warehouse, 2,000 square feet of office. As you've heard by prior witnesses, this is really going to be a one-user type of building, but we did look at this separately as though it was a 12,000 square foot warehouse, 2,000 square foot office, as though they're operating separately, independently, as those generic types of uses that you heard reference to earlier. So when we looked at the traffic impact for this site, from a trip generation perspective, although I will speak to the operations for this specific user, the traffic study really considers this as more or less a generic type of building. So we estimated the trips for this site based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And roughly in the morning, you're going to have, again, on a generic user, about 25 people coming into the site, a handful of people leaving. And in the afternoon, those same 25 people leaving with a handful coming in. That's for a generic type of office, or warehouse building. As you've heard, and as will be testified to by the owner, the number of employees for this site is actually much less. The number of employees are in the range of 8 to 10 for this specific user. So although for a generic type of warehouse, the trip generation would be a bit higher, the user that is actually proposing this building and the proposed use here, with an account of 10 employees, it's about a third of what might be generated by a generic office building. Again, looking at this generically, we ran capacity analysis with that higher trip generation. And what we found, I think, as everyone knows, Route 33 can be tough during the peak hours, getting in and out. And this site is going to be no different. And at times, if users are coming out during the highest morning peak hour and highest evening peak hour, they're going to wait a little bit, and they're going to wait for the benefit of the signal at Route 33 and Colts Neck Road, where that signal is going to go red and create gaps in the traffic stream. And that's when people are going to be able to leave this site. So again, this site, from a generic perspective, we're looking at about 25 coming in.
Now, this is at peak time, correct?
This is at peak time, that is correct, yes.
What is your peak time?
So from the analysis perspective, we look at the peak hour, like the peak rush hour for Route 33.
What is that?
And I'll give that to you in just a moment. So that would have been at 7:45 to 8:45 a.m. and 4:45 to 5:45 p.m. So those are the hours that all of this analysis is based on. So what we did is said, okay, a warehouse in its highest hour in the morning is going to have 25 people coming in. And then we looked at this specific stretch of roadway on Route 33 and found the busiest time for this roadway is 7:45 to 8:45. We don't know necessarily that they're going to occur at exactly that same time, but for the purposes of this study, we said that they were going to occur at the same time. So that is truly a worst case analysis. The reality is, and a lot of warehouse users, not just the tenant that is proposed here, they'll typically come in during the earlier hours before the typical rush hour that happens on the adjacent street system. Usually those employees, they might have a shift that starts at 7 a.m., so they need to be in a little bit earlier. For this specific user, you heard hours of 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. And something that wasn't spoken to yet was that employees would come in, they would change over into a truck, and then they would need to leave the site to go to their job site, wherever it is in this area. And the notes that I have in speaking with the applicant was that those trucks, those work trucks, would need to leave by 7:30 a.m., which means, so for this user, the employees that need to leave here are coming in sometime before 7:30, switching over to the truck, and then getting out of the site, and that's all happening before the rush hour on Route 33 is happening per our traffic counts.
What is the level of service at that time?
For the counts, the level of service is an F. So it's, the threshold for an F is at 50 seconds, and we would exceed that. So the average, according to the capacity analysis, again, this does not consider the signal at Route 30 and 33 and Colts Neck Road, they would wait on average over 50 seconds per vehicle.
Okay, my next question is the level of service at peak time is a F. What is the level of service after peak time?
Traditionally, we only look at the peak hours, so that would be the worst case analysis that I just referred to. So we didn't take a look at the times that would happen outside there, but usually what we found in these types of situations, the level of service gets drastically better outside of the peak hours, and that's simply because, especially in the morning, you have a very distinct morning rush hour when people are going to work, and then it usually dies down somewhere around 8:30 to 9 a.m., and then it starts to pick back up for the lunchtime rush. Dies down a little bit more. You have school activity in the afternoon, then you have the afternoon rush hour, and then it really dies down in the evening. Traditionally, you really don't see an impact outside of that AM peak hour and the PM peak hour, and that's why we don't look at it. And that's why we keep our analysis in the morning and the afternoon rush hours. So again, this is a absolute worst case scenario in which all the employees of this building are trying to enter and leave the site at precisely the same time as everyone is using Route 33 to get to and from work.
Now, out of your calculations, did you take in consideration the Toll Brothers development that's being built?
We did apply a background growth rate to the traffic of 1.5% per year per the NJDOT standard, so we did include that background growth rate.
But 1.5, but Toll Brothers, how many units is that, 180?
154.
154? That's 154 units.
No.
And then you also have Farmer Brown's. Huh?
They got preliminary.
No, they got preliminary already. Havanian's moving forward with it, so. But all of that's gonna add, and that's on the east side of Colts Neck Road, so that traffic is not gonna be governed by that traffic light at Colts Neck Road. All of that traffic is gonna just come straight out, either go east or westbound side.
Again, I'm not familiar with that development. I know, as is typical with any traffic study that our firm does, we always reach out to the municipality to find out if there is any adjacent developments approved.
Did you do that?
Yeah, we do it on every single project.
So then that's in your calculations?
Again, I'm not seeing it here,
Okay.
but we would have reached out. It's something that, even if it was to be included, because of the very low trip generation associated with this site, I don't expect that it would make a drastic difference. Just for reference, DOT, we talked a lot about the DOT permit. We've actually submitted to the New Jersey Department of Transportation. We've received comments from the New Jersey Department of Transportation
For this application?
for this specific
Okay.
application.
Charlie, do you have that? Have that been supplied?
We got a traffic impact statement. I can't say off the top of my head whether or not they included the traffic from the Toll Brothers and Farmer Brown's. I'd say that this application was filed in the early part of the year. If the Farmer Brown's approvals came thereafter, I think it's very unlikely that was included in there.
Farmer Brown's came this year, so.
No,
Yes.
I know. I'm not even, I'm just saying that all of that is coming down the pike, but did you get they filed with the Department of Transportation? You know,
I did not see a copy of the permit that was filed with the DOT. They indicated that a permit was filed, but we didn't get anything,
Have y'all
copied to
received
us.
We can certainly provide that correspondence.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. Charlie, y'all are handling the traffic, right?
Yeah, so I just got a couple questions for Andrew. So the level surface F, is that for the driveway exiting onto Route 33? Or is that also Route 33 trying to get onto the site?
That's an excellent question. I should have clarified that. So the level of service F is limited to the site driveway only, meaning that any delay is not going to be something that would be felt by anybody on Route 33. Coming into the site, so making a left turn into the site from Route 33, the level of service is B. So that's a very
Is what?
B, level of service B is in Barry.
And that's during peak time?
That's during peak times. Again, this is a left turn movement into the site, yes. And again, this is a function of, there's not a lot of trip generation here. So what I was about to get to in talking about DOT is that traditionally DOT and the ITE for that matter, they don't consider a development that generates less than 100 trips a significant project that would require any kind of capacity analysis. Now, I'm not saying, obviously we did conduct capacity analysis here. We went above and beyond. The only reason I bring that up is I just want to highlight what some of the standards out there are for ITE. When would you conduct a study and what would DOT require? We're about a third of what would normally create would trigger that threshold for a study. So I just want to put that out there so that the board can put this into perspective as to the level of trip generation here, and the reality is how low it is.
You're saying a third. Now, is that this applicant or what could be used as a warehouse?
What could be used as a warehouse.
Okay. So it's not directed to this applicant?
That's our traffic study. In fact, we had limited knowledge of the operations when we put together the traffic study from the analysis perspective. But then when we started looking at the site plans, we came to understand the operations.
Okay. Charlie, just have your guys look at that.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it again. Obviously, we were hoping to vet out a lot of the information from the applicant as far as the types of vehicles. We definitely had concerns with, I think he said 28, but the report actually said like 32 SU-30 type box trucks coming in and out of the site entrance during the peak hour.
I don't think, it does say 32. So when I was saying coming in, that's 25 coming in, 7 coming out, so 32 total. But they wouldn't be box trucks. That's just all truck. That's all vehicles.
That's all traffic.
So that's passenger vehicles, that's trucks, that's deliveries, that's everything, all inclusive.
Okay, and you don't have any indication right now from the applicant and any of the information they passed on to you on what percentage of those distribution is going to be?
Well, so I'll put it two ways, right? So there's been a lot of discussion about this project as a generic type of project. Usually a warehouse in the peak hours, again, because trucks try to not play with rush hour traffic. They try to be outside of that. Even for a warehouse type use, the number of trucks is about 10% of that overall number. For this specific site, I did inquire about what's happening from an operational perspective, and I've been told there would be maximum one single unit type of delivery per day, and that would be on a maximum. The other type of truck activity would, it's a mix of, it's really work vehicles. I wouldn't call it trucks, it's work vehicles. So that's that heavy duty F-250 that's got the, you know, the double wheel well on the back, and they have the cabinets mounted to the side, right? That would be a work vehicle that would be leaving around that 7:30 a.m. time that I mentioned earlier. We did discuss with the applicant tractor trailers. Tractor trailers isn't a site that they can't come to the site. It's something that's not going to happen. The applicant understands that. So this is a site that is for single unit, non-articulating type trucks.
So, and then as far as exiting the site, you did provide like a circulation plan for an SU-30. It certainly looks like for you know, an SU-30 making a right-hand turn going 33 eastbound, they have to swing into the incoming traffic lane for the driveway there. That's kind of one of the questions we were asking with opening the radius there, you know, to make sure that you have safe ingress and egress out of the site.
We don't have that.
Oh, you don't have that on there? It's sheet
The plan.
14 of the
Matt, do you
site
have it?
plans?
Oh, yes, okay, I got it, found it. Yeah, see, that's my main concern, is making that right-hand turn out of this site.
I'll just start here, and I don't want to rehash this whole subject. I think there's been a lot of discussion about it. We want to do this. We want to do the radius. I agree with you. It would make that turn easier. I had mentioned that we had applied to DOT. We've already obtained a waiver for the edge clearance. They will typically require a 12-foot edge clearance from the property line to where the radius meets the existing edge of pavement in this case, or curb line. 12 feet is typically required. I believe here we have 0 feet or a foot, but something very small, something less than 12. We've approached them for that waiver, and they have granted us that waiver at this point. Understanding the concerns of the board, we're going to go back and we're going to inquire with them about putting in this radius, which is essentially going to end up creating a negative edge clearance because we're going to be going beyond that property line. And as Josh had mentioned earlier, that can, on a generic site, that can create constraints along the property frontage, which is why we have to approach DOT and explain this very specific situation, that there is the approved site plan for Lot 14, and why we feel comfortable that it can be provided. I did look at the site plan for Lot 14. That driveway is proposed sufficiently to the east, where we would have significant separation between the radius on this site and what would be on 14. Traditionally, DOT likes to see 24-foot minimum. We would have well in excess of it. So I don't have a reason to believe that we can't provide this. I think this really comes down to a paperwork issue, is you have a radius that is not solely in front of our site, and DOT doesn't like to see that. It involves the adjacent Lot 14, and that's just where it comes down to. We need to approach them and discuss it with them and make sure that everyone's on board with this. So again, I don't see a significant problem to this other than the fact that it involves Lot 14. It involves that owner and having their permission. It involves DOT doing something that they traditionally don't allow. So I think we have all the right reasons to do it, but we're not the ones that can say yes. If it was in front of our frontage, we'd say yes, of course we'd do it. So anyway, I don't want to beat that subject to death anymore, but that's where we are with that.
Well, we know what we got to do. Okay. So you don't feel that this applicant is going to impede Route 33 ingress and egress?
No, and so I'll answer Charlie's question about the SU-30 coming in and coming out. That, number one, I talked about this operator only having maybe one delivery per day, and you have all the trucks that are leaving the site in the morning to go out to the site, and then they're all coming back at once. So really, you have this flow of vehicles coming out in the morning, and then a flow of them coming back. So there's not really a lot of need for that two-directional.
But at what time is that delivery coming in? Well, see, that's why we need the applicant. We need to know, what time is that delivery coming in? Why, is that delivery gonna be delivered while those trucks are still on this site before they leave?
Well, I think even if they were on this site, that wouldn't be an issue.
No, I know.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. It's certainly for an SU-30, they're swinging into the opposing entrance coming into the site. So,
Totally agree.
the applicant's got to be able to provide some level of certainty with hours of operation and restricting, deliveries to and from the site to ensure that, you're not going to have a truck coming in and one going out at the same time
Correct.
and have an accident issue.
And it's not just this applicant, but it's for the future of the site, right?
Exactly.
That we want an enduring solution here, not a specific solution.
Right.
So Jen, you said that there is an enduring solution that was in front of the planning board for this particular site.
No, what I said was the lot 14, which is the lot immediately to the east, has a site plan approval on it. And I think that what was testified was that that driveway for that particular site plan is further to the east, providing adequate separation, and that they will approach the DOT to see if they can get that curb radius that we would like to see, even though it's gonna flare in front of the adjoining lot, which could potentially help that situation.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah, DOT, they're going to comment probably on the radius. They might also have a comment about the shoulder width, widen the shoulder to ensure that there's enough space to like that turn less harsh onto Route 33 East there. So it's, kind of one of the things we always ask the applicant is having all these ducks in a row before you come to, so we're not asking these questions before the board. So,
I'd just like to speak to that one point about they could do this. At this point, we've responded to their comments. The only reason we don't have a permit in hand is because these two lots need to be consolidated. And we can't really do that until this board takes action. So we can't finalize a permit with DOT. But my point is we've worked through a lot of that. And again, I'm going to forward that correspondence so you can see it yourself. But we've worked through a lot of these questions that are they reviewed this and they have those sorts of comments.
No, I
So not to
understand.
say that they're not valid, I'm just saying they've seen this and they haven't made those same things.
Yeah, so this has been a question in my letter since I think it was issued, since we asked for the circulation, is that the SU-30 exiting the site has to swing into the opposing lane, so.
Well, see, we already have that issue on Route 33 at Yellowbrook Road. They have to, and the accidents is, I guarantee you, there's one a week. And we've got a lot of trucks that pull in and out of Yellowbrook Road, and they're constantly closing 33 because of that.
These accidents are always on the news.
It happens. I know what's there. I live here. And I'm telling you, if these trucks are coming out of here and they're impeding in to that westbound lane, you're gonna have accidents. They have accidents in front of Hungry Puppy all the time. Turning into Hungry Puppy and leaving Hungry Puppy. They have them right there too. So, that's what we're trying to avoid here.
Respectfully, I don't want to equate this to a public intersection of Yellowbrook and Route 33. Our office has, as part of other work that our office has done, I believe that signal, if it doesn't already meet, that intersection, if it doesn't already meet a warrant for a signal.
It does. We already know that. It's already been approved by this board.
And I understand, and recognizing that, this is not the same thing.
No, but what I'm saying, the Hungry Puppy is, and they have accidents there all the time. 33 right in that section there, that's a busy area.
Agreed. I've been to the cabin before. I understand.
Well,
pulling in and
the
out of
cabin's
there.
way on the other side. I'm not even talking about that. Right where you're at, where 34 comes in, 33 meets up, and then you got all of that commotion right there, the U-turn. That's a dangerous area right there. I mean, I drive it every day.
I agree with you. One other thing that I'll just put for the board's consideration, from a trip generation perspective, this is a very low intensity lot. If this was to be all office, the intensity of this site would be much higher. So from kind of looking at what could go here from a trip and comparing it to the use next, I'm blanking on the puppy.
Hungry Puppy.
Hungry Puppy. That's a retail type use where
Exactly.
you have a lot more people coming and going to that use. So this is a much more controlled use. You don't have the general public coming and going. You have employees that know this site very well, or they will after their first week of employment. And even of those employees, it's very low in intensity, meaning that there's activity in the morning, there's activity in the afternoon, and that's it. So I understand, and I'm sure, I don't doubt that there has been issues with Hungry Puppy, but it's not the same type of use.
No, I understand that, but I'm just telling you, you get people coming in and out. The people, I hate to say it, they're very rude on 33. They're not going to give you a break, period. And people sitting there get fed up with it, waiting to get out, and they just push themselves so they could get out. And that's what creates the accidents.
But I think
And
when we have,
that's all I'm saying. If we could get that radius in there, whatever we have to do to keep a truck from impeding in that westbound side, I'll tell you what, that would help a lot.
we definitely
That's-
understand
that's all we're
that,
gonna
and
do.
Like we said, we would love to accommodate that
Okay.
request. But when we have the applicant come back at the next meeting,
Yes,
he's going to speak to the operation of the site itself.
Right.
And then I think that'll fill in some of the gaps as it relates to who's coming in, who's leaving, when they're coming in, when they're leaving. And I know that your concern is if there's some form of queue, does that impact cars coming in or out, and then potentially
Right.
creating some traffic congestion?
but see, I'm not also, I'm not, it's not totally 100% about this applicant.
Right.
If you've got a square driveway out and say this applicant sells a property to somebody that's going to do warehousing, and they got trucks coming in and out, it might not necessarily be the same trucks or the same size trucks that this applicant's going to have. We need to address that at this point in time.
While I appreciate that,
Yeah.
we are here seeking a use variance, and the use variance, we are tailoring it specifically to this applicant. And I know you're thinking for down the road, but if at some point, if the board was to approve this application based upon set conditions that we are going to put forward to the board, then any subsequent owner that was going to have different times, different employees, they would have to come back to the board and seek relief.
I understand that, but, you're asking us to give you a variance right on a property line with the entrance driveway. We want to make sure that that's going to work. That's
understand.
all I'm
Yes.
going to say. So, do you have any further?
The only thing I'll add, I think there's been just some discussion about the signing, the monument sign on Route 33. I would just like to add, I think that the sign, I know, Jen, you had mentioned that it's, you don't have an issue with it, but just to put on the record why it's important that it's out there. If you have deliveries coming to this site, it's important that people know what it is, and also it's important that people know what it's not. A lot of times when someone sees a paved driveway and there's nothing out there, I think it's helpful for the voters to know what this is not. You might be looking for something that's in the general vicinity, you see that driveway with a sign, you know not to turn down there. Likewise, if you have a delivery coming here, they know where to turn.
I don't think that was her
Yeah, it was on the
concern.
building.
I think it was the one that was on the building that's so far off of the road that, that was her question.
Okay, understood, I misunderstood.
The sign out on the road is
Freestanding
very
sign, I agree
necessity.
from a traffic safety standpoint needs to be
Absolutely.
there, and I understand why the setback is what it is. I was just questioning why you need a sign on the building. I don't take any exception to the sign on the building, I just am curious, considering it's back tucked behind another use, that if there's no public going there, why that's necessary, but the freestanding sign on the road, I 100% agree, needs to be visible from both directions, so that it's provides safe ingress and egress to the site, for sure.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, just one more last
Yes,
question.
sir.
So, in the traffic report, Andrew, it indicates that 60% of the traffic exiting the site goes eastbound on Route 33. Do you have any idea of that traffic, how many vehicles during a peak hour ends up going north on Route 34 there? Or have you looked at any impact that
East or west?
east on 33 and then going north on 34? Anyone that lives in town
Yeah,
driving
that's
east,
a bad intersection there, too.
it's a bad intersection. I know the DOT is aware of the issue there. There's not really any stack storage making a left turn to go north on 34 there. I was just hoping to hear some,
You gotta go all the way down, south, go around the circle, and then come back up.
That's the best way.
That's,
That doesn't
And to be
happen.
frank, I don't
Yeah.
necessarily disagree with that. This
Yeah.
is an existing condition, and when that thing is backed up, it's easier to go down to the circle, and I think that people that are leaving this site are going to do no different. If that has capacity to store in there, they're going to sit there and wait. If it's backing up, they're going to bypass that and go down to the circle. As far as the numbers go, as the actual numbers that would do that, we have about, in the afternoon, going that direction, we have 14 vehicles exiting to that direction. We haven't split that up between how many would go north and how many would go south. If we're to venture about 50-50, be about 7 people that would be looking to make that movement. It's a very low number of vehicles that would be looking to do that.
Okay. Okay, Charlie. Jen, any more? Any questions further of the board?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll move.
We have nothing further tonight.
Okay. Do we have another date?
Do you want December 16th?
I can't be here on the 16th.
No Christmas parties now.
Damn, they took away the Christmas party?
No, I can't. I have to be in Scotland.
December 9th, we have 2 use variances, so I don't know if we want to put anybody there.
What are they?
And the only, Bennett Road Associates
Oh,
and
no,
K10.
forget it.
And the only other date I have is January 13th, which is reorg.
What else is on 13th that you booked?
Right now, JAT, and they haven't been heard yet, so they would go first.
Yeah, this one would go first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
13th is good.
113 is fine.
Okay. January 13th.
I just need an extension of time on the record, too.
We'll accommodate that.
Through the end of January?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, case number BA 1836, 1294 Equities LLC. It's a use variance preliminary and final major site plan. Will be carried to January 13th, 2020, with no further notice. Expiration date would be January, through the end of January.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank
members
you,
of the
sir.
board. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
okay, you too. Okay, we have vouchers.
Vouchers.
Can I have a motion to approve vouchers?
I'll make.
So pass.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Hughes, seconded by Mr. Orozco. Can we have all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That'll work. Okay, the other thing we gotta do real quick, Eileen had passed out our 2020, that's a typo up top, it's 2020 meeting dates. I need everybody to kind of go through that, and if they have any problems with that, next meeting, we'll vote on this, but if you have any issues,
Well, like,
text me.
like on the 18th of May, I'm gonna go to a wedding
That's fine.
in
That's
Tennessee
fine.
or something
That's
like that. Yeah, okay.
That's fine.
All right.
You know,
But everything else looks good.
okay.
Can you ask them to move the weather?
No.
But, okay, do you want to go ahead and memorialize this, or you want to
No,
wait?
no, the discussed, like, December, do we really want to come in the week between Christmas and New Year's?
No, we don't.
No, so, I mean, you can go with one meeting, or you can go with the 14th and the 21st if you want, as an option.
Why don't we go ahead and put it at the 21st, but don't put anything, schedule anything for that unless we absolutely have to.
Right.
21st
And
of what?
then,
December.
December next year.
Oh.
And in November, you're far enough away. What about election? You're,
election day, I think, would be on the 2nd
that time? Okay, then we're far enough away from that.
Yeah. October, you can't do the 12th because it's
No.
Columbus Day, so I moved it to the 5th.
Correct.
September 28th is Yom Kippur, so I moved it to the 21st, which is so you'll have back-to-back meetings in September.
Well, it's not like this year started.
Is
So,
November,
we're good.
is November 9th Veterans Day?
Oh, you know what?
Yeah,
No, Veterans Day is always on the 11th.
yeah.
Always on the 11th.
Always on
the 11th. All
Yes.
right, on V-Day.
Okay,
So,
let's go ahead and vote these.
Okay.
Y'all all in agreements? The 21st, and she's not gonna put any schedule application on the 21st unless we absolutely have to. December 21st. So,
No, that'll be the 14th.
okay, we're good?
We're good if you want
Okay, can I have a motion to adopt the 2020 meetings? Motion by Mr. Roscoe,
I'll second. Go ahead.
seconded by Mr. Saya. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None.
Thank you.
Okay, you got a January 13th.
Yes, that's our reorg.
Okay. Okay, is there any further business? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
All right, we're going to have our...
Make a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
hold on, hold on.
Oops, sorry.
a second.
We're going to have our holiday party on December 9th, so 6 o'clock instead of 7:30. Live in the kitchen.
Here,
Yes.
yeah, back there.
All right?
6 o'clock.
I'll send a reminder when I send the agenda, but just so you know.
I'll save you a plate.
That's fine.
We gotta save Mr. Saya a plate. Okay?
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion to adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Moretti, seconded by Mr. Roscoe. All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Zoning Board adjourns at 10:35. Thank you, guys.